school for a while. I even had a great nephew that was supposed to do soccer through Zoom. It didn't work, right? And a lot of things don't work unless you're live. And so just having all of you here representing our city, being out there doing life again, and for us to celebrate life again, and so we can really connect with one another. This is real life. What's going on behind me? Anyway, I'm just so grateful that you all represent our city so well. I'm grateful that we have people representing all of our schools in the area, and this is a prideful moment for the city of Portland. And I think it's important to notice that you're our first moment live after 2 years of being virtual. So thanks for welcoming us back. It's great that the youth are here to do that. Congratulations.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like my colleague Dan Ryan, I want to congratulate all of you on your victory, and it's also a real pleasure to welcome you to City Hall. I'll tell you, I have a kid who plays on PCU. You are literally heroes to him. So thank you for being a role model. Thank you for representing our city so well, and I look forward to following your soccer careers as they evolve over time.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So I just want to, again, echo what my colleagues have said. We're really, really proud of you. You have made Portland proud during a really important time. The city's opening back up, and what a great way to celebrate. So thank you for bringing joy into the city, and welcome to City Hall.
Thank you, Mayor. I also just want to add my congratulations. I am so proud of what you've accomplished so far and what you will continue to accomplish. What I know is that you are disciplined, you are committed, and you are ready to make sure that at some point we get a championship, right? That's the plan? Thank you so much for being here today. Very grateful that our very first public outing has such remarkable young men who represent our city so well. Thanks for being here.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you. Well, colleagues, this is the May 4th, 2022 morning session of the Portland City Council. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners. Ryan. Hardesty.
Here.
Maps.
Here.
Rubio.
Here.
Wheeler.
But I do want to make a brief statement. This is the first time we've been back in this chamber for about 2 years. I want to thank everybody who worked so hard to make the virtual system work. There were many positive things about meeting virtually. People reported to me that they were not typically able to come down to City Hall and testify in person. People who are maybe older or had disabilities found it more convenient to be able to testify via Zoom. We also heard from people who work during the day that it's very problematic and takes a lot of time out of their workday if they have to come downtown, find parking or take transit, wait their turn, and speak their 2 minutes or their 3 minutes. And so what we decided to do was a hybrid system, because we know there are many people who also like to participate in person. They like to be able to come to the chamber. Frankly, I like to be here and see my colleagues and have conversations in person. But we've decided to keep the online version as well. So people may now participate and testify either here in person in our council chambers, or they can do so remotely as we've been doing for the last couple of years. The idea of having people here in the chamber will work as long as people work with us to make sure that our time here is effective, that we are able to conduct the city's business without disruptions. That's not up to the people up here at the dais. That's really up to the people who choose to show up in person. So if you allow us to do our part and allow us to give space not only to hear you, but to hear other people who choose to come to the chamber or participate online, we will continue this hybrid program. But we will regularly evaluate whether it is working or whether it is not working. And if we need to, we would go back to the virtual plan exclusively. But I want to be clear, that's not what I want to do, and that's not what any of my colleagues want to do. We want to keep both options open. So I'm asking you, as members of the public, work with us to help our democracy thrive. Let's make sure that we sign up, that we testify when it is our turn. When it is not our turn, let's let other people speak their minds, even if they disagree vehemently with your personal perspective. Let's do what we can to make this work together. I just want to say it's great to be back in this chamber on a beautiful sunny morning in Portland with all of you and with my colleagues and city staff. And with that preamble, now I'll turn it over to our city attorney for rules of order and decorum. Good morning.
Good morning. It's nice to be back and see all of you in person. Welcome to Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. The City of Portland is currently transitioning its workforce from remote work to a hybrid work model and its facilities from closed to limited public access. City Hall and the Portland Building will have limited public access as the city navigates this transition. In accordance with Portland City Code and state law, City Council will hold hybrid public meetings with limited in-person attendance, supplementing electronic attendance. Members of council will elect to attend remotely by video or teleconference or in person from week to week. The city has made several avenues available for the public to listen to the audio broadcast of this meeting. The meeting is available to the public on the city's YouTube channel, eGov PDX, and Channel 30. Members of the public desiring to testify before council in person or virtually must sign up in advance by visiting the council agenda on the council clerk's webpage. The published council agenda at www.portland.gov/council/agenda contains information about how and when you may sign up for testimony. You may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions, reports, or the first readings of ordinances. In-person testimony may occur from one of several city facility locations, including but not limited to City Council chambers, or the Lovejoy Room in City Hall, and the Lizzie K. Weeks Room in the Portland Building. Written testimony may always be submitted at cctestimony@portlandoregon.gov. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. There is a timer that will indicate when your time is done. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. And if you want to express you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct such as shouting, refusing to conclude your testimony when your time is up, or interrupting others' testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Should a disruption occur in person, council may take a short recess and reconvene virtually. We appreciate your patience as the city works through the various logistics, administrative, and technical issues during this transition period. Thank you.
Thank you. First up is communications. First individual, please. Keelan, item number 341.
Request of Miranda Eisen to address council regarding a ban on the sale of foie gras.
Good morning.
My name is Miranda Eisen. I've lived in Portland for over 18 years, and I recently completed my law degree at Lewis and Clark Law School. I'm here today to ask you to enact the proposed ordinance to ban the sale of force-fed foie gras in the city of Portland. I loved growing up in Portland and am proud to call it my home to this day. We're celebrated as a place that prioritizes animal welfare, stands against the worst forms of cruelty, and has some of the best vegan food in the country. But sadly, we're falling behind progressive places like New York City and California by allowing local restaurants to continue to sell foie gras from force-fed animals. Since December 2021, advocates have been attending these city council meetings on a regular basis, imploring you to ban the sale of foie gras for a variety of reasons. The foie gras production process has been widely denounced as inhumane by both veterinarians and the general public. You've heard about the public health risks that these suffering, sick ducks and geese pose to our communities and the environmental hazards we continue to enable by supporting an industry that wastes large amounts of water, pollutes air and waterways with manure and slaughter waste, and threatens wild endangered species through deforestation. The Portland community has spoken up loud and clear about this issue, including the over 70 local restaurants and retailers that support this ban. I encourage you to heed this call to action and protect the interests of animals, our environment, and ourselves by banning the sale of force-fed foie gras in the city of Portland in 2022. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Miranda, and thank you for putting in a plug for the vegan and vegetarian restaurants here in the city of Portland. I actually went to the grand opening of Next Level Burger on West Burnside this weekend, and shameless plug, I highly recommend it for anybody who's interested. Thank you for your testimony. Next individual, please, Keelan, item number 342.
Request of Don Bach to address council regarding opposition to the Rose Bus project on Capitol Highway.
Good morning, Don.
Don, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? So I'm Don Bach.
Don, we can see you, but we can't hear you.
We're working on it here. You hear me now? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. There's an echo.
Don, it sounds like there may be a computer or a cell phone.
We just shut them down, I think. Okay, thank you very much. This is
now we can hear you.
This is a bit frustrating to work on, believe me. Anyway, I'm Don Bach. I live in Hillsdale. I'm speaking on behalf of the Hillsdale Business and Professional Association, of which I'm a member. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and commissioners, for providing the opportunity to speak to your group. We request the Capitol Highway Rose Lane project be shortened to a 6-month study and implementation be delayed until 2025. What is the Capitol Highway Rose Lane project, and what are the benefits of this project? The project is a bus and turn lane project that runs from on Capitol Highway from Barber Boulevard west through Hillsdale Commercial District to the start of the Beaverton Hillsdale Highway. This project is not related or connected to any other Rose Lane projects. In other words, this is the only thing that's happening in this all Southwest with regard to buses. PBOT expects a travel time savings from project at this time. PBOT expects no travel time savings from this project at this time. They believe that when the travel returns to pre-pandemic levels on buses and traffic, that the bus travelers will receive 1 to 2 minute time savings on their total bus trip. I would guess that's maybe 5% or less of the total time. The Rose Bus project on Capitol Highway will dedicate half the westbound travel lanes coming into Hillsdale from Barber to buses only. PBOT data shows that the 2021 peak hour traffic on Capitol Highway was 500 vehicles. PBOT also projects that 320 vehicles per peak hour will be diverted onto other streets under this proposed plan under the pre-pandemic conditions of travel. This represents 64% of the 2021 peak hour traffic. For the businesses in Hillsdale, this is very significant. The purpose of the dedicated Rose Line is to reduce bus delay. Under present conditions, there is no bus delay. So we're solving a problem that doesn't exist. PBOT proposes the pilot project start immediately and lasts 3 to 5 years. If the anticipated impact on our small businesses occurs, many who have suffered losses due to the COVID pandemic will go out of business in a matter of months. We therefore seek to delay this project until 2025. When our income statements and our balance sheets recover from the start of the pilot project. By 2025, TriMet ridership will have stabilized from the severe drop of the last 2 years, and the actual bus delay and ridership changes, if any, can be measured before and after the pilot study to see if a small change in travel time affects ridership. By 2025, the traffic on Capitol Highway and our local streets will be back to a steady state. So the impact on our narrow, curved local streets without sidewalks can be fairly addressed. PBOT has not conducted nor discussed any financial analysis of the effect of the proposed pilot project with our business community, nor have they projected or discussed the likely impact.
Don, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Basically, we're asking that there be a committee formed to address this, including all people from Hillsdale and the business community, and working with PBOT TriMet to do this. And we ask that it be delayed till 2025 and be a 6-month study. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your testimony. Next individual, please, Keelan, item 343.
Request of Glenn Bridger to address council regarding the Rose Lane project on Southwest Capitol Highway, Hillsdale.
Good morning.
Glenn, we can't hear you.
Council. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, you sound great.
Okay, thank you. And I see the graphic is up there. My name is Glenn Bridger. I represent the Hillsdale Neighborhood Association. 4 significant community organizations in Southwest Portland have evaluated the proposed Rose Lane project and have recommended that the implementation be delayed and further studied. Those are the HBPA, whom you just heard, Southwest Trails, Southwest Neighborhoods Incorporated, and my organization, the Hillsdale Neighborhood Association. Here's a map of the project location showing key streets that provide alternate routes for handling traffic diverted because of the westbound rush hour congestion that is anticipated in the post-pandemic world, where this project will only save an approximate 1 to 2 minutes of travel time for riders. We are used to traffic diversion here in our community. When there is a sneeze on Capitol Highway, Barber or Terwilliger, we witnessed a change in traffic flow. A month ago, a freak snowstorm shut down Capitol Highway in the project area. One winding street, the very winding Park Hill Drive, had 400 cars trying to make their way along it. One semi-truck found he was unable to make all the curves and he had to back out. We know traffic diversion. We know it will happen on occasion. We are not willing to accept it as a daily planned event. PBOT studies have projected how much traffic will avoid Capitol Highway. We have seen this discussion in what it'll do to our commercial district. Others wander through our local streets that you see here. PBOT does not monitor those streets and has made no estimate of the traffic figures. I ask you to focus on the intersection midway between Barber and the commercial district where traffic signal at Terwilliger and Capitol Highway is located. In their pre-pandemic traffic counts, PBOT found that peak hour traffic from the south turning westward on Capitol Highway was 100 vehicles per hour, which represented our local community, and 200 vehicles per hour coming from the north. That traffic coming from the north is from Portland's largest employer, OHSU. This is a major exit from their campus. It's located approximately a mile to the north. It also brings 3 TriMet bus routes, 61, 64, and 65, from their campus during evening rush hours. Historically, these 300 cars have been able to merge into 2 lanes of traffic going westbound on Capitol Highway. The project will now have to fit into a single lane with the expectation that it will cause gridlock at this intersection. There are no storage lanes on Terwilliger. So what is the issue? We want the solution to all of these issues. We do not want harm to our local commercial district. We do not want diversion onto our local streets. And an intersection where gridlock will rule is totally unacceptable to both our neighborhood and to our city.
Thank you, Glenn. We appreciate your testimony. Whoa. Thank you, Glenn. Commissioner Hardesty. Why is there an echo now?
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to just put some important information on the public record. I appreciate the folks who testified today in regard to the Capitol Highway Rose Lane project. But I want to put some facts on the record. This proposed Southwest Capitol Highway Rose Lane project will serve 9 bus lines at full service capacity in 2019. This quarter saw 28 buses per hour in the peak hour time period. The project would add bus and turn lanes in both east and west directions on Capitol Highway approaching Southwest Sunset Boulevard. Reallocation of general purpose travel lanes. People driving may still use the lanes to turn into driveways and intersections. While traffic volumes are increasing, current traffic levels have been significantly reduced compared to pre-COVID. Pre-COVID modeling predicted a rerouting of 320 vehicles in the peak hours, but with low traffic volumes, rerouting is likely not expected. Given the limited local service connection in the area, traffic is not expected to devote to local street services. Let me say that this project, construction is expected to be relatively quick, completed within 2 months, which is almost unheard of when you talk about transportation projects. During construction, driveways and sidewalks will remain open. Rose Lane project corridors will be implemented using an incremental pilot approach to deploy change quickly and to anticipate and respond to real-world impacts as they emerge through monitoring. This is a form of climate action and equity that acts with appropriate urgency. I'm sorry, lost my spot. It acts with appropriate urgency while being responsive to community needs. PBOT is committed to monitoring impacts to local service streets as part of the project and mitigating them as needed. I want to make sure the council knows that the City Council adopted the Rose Lane project in 2020 as a roadmap for project development and implementation, including Southwest Capitol Highway as a key corridor. PBOT has met with Southwest community organizations such as the Southwest Neighbors Incorporated, Sweeney, Southwest Community Service Groups, as well as with local organizations such as the Hillsdale Neighborhood Association and Hillsdale Business and Professional Association. We, as always, welcome public input. This project should be, this project is a project that actually furthers the council's goals around climate mitigation and equity. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Next individual, please, Keelan, item number 344.
Request of Diana Martinez to address council regarding a support of a ban on fur. Diana canceled their request.
Very good, thank you. Item 345, please.
Request of John Carter to address council regarding tree canopy reduction.
Hi, council. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear, and we can see you as well.
All right, great. Yeah, it's great that this is in person now. I'll have to next time I'll have to come in. So yeah, Portland's tree canopy has shrunk over the past 5 years. Pretty alarming statistic given that we're in a climate crisis. The city has also inexplicably ended its contract with Friends of Trees, an important civic institution, I believe, that has been teaching people how to plant trees since 1989, mostly on the east side, and have contributed over 1 million trees to our canopy. So why end it now, and why without clear explanation? The city claims to be developing its own program, but this will take a lot of time. We don't have, and invariably cost more money than the $35 per tree that Friends of Tree charges, if not directly, than through taxation. The city's goal is to increase tree canopy, yet the opposite is occurring. Talk one thing, do another, and this seems to be a trend of many of our climate-related goals we're facing, including the shift away from automobile dependency. But in the case of trees, why? Within the span of 5 years, to me, there's an obvious connection to be made. That there's been a boom in building from developers that have been tearing up green space and old trees for 5/1s. The motivation here has been money. You don't make money keeping trees, you make money building the box to the universal spec for maximum financial return on the lot and efficiency. This would be a reasonable sacrifice if these developments were reducing inflating housing costs, but it doesn't seem that they are. More and more units seem to lie vacant without going down in price because of how the loans are structured and other financial trickery. But I digress. It's just frustrating to see because, as with the trees, money seems to be this unconscious authority on the decisions that we're making. So what's the city's plan here? To me, the solution to heat domes shouldn't be to buy people air conditioners, which is a solution only in the short term to help save lives. What we need to be doing is exponentially planting trees to the tune of a massive civic works program, which should be, I think, facilitated by Friends of Trees since they have the infrastructure and expertise to get such a thing done. We need to depave as much as the city is reasonably possible, so we're not roasting on a blacktop, and offer incentives for rewilding, incentivizing people to not mow their lawns, incentivizing developers to offer community gardens and lots of trees. But instead, it seems that we're headed in the opposite direction. More concrete, more pavement, less trees, less green space, a less wild and more urbanized city. This is a goal of money because these things make money. I think that the council's intentions are good. I think all of your intentions are good. I believe this government wants a greener, more resilient Portland, but the results seem to be speaking to an opposite conclusion. So I ask again, what is the plan? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony, John. And we look forward to seeing you in person next time. That'll be great. Keelan, that completes communications.
It does.
Have any items been pulled off of the consent agenda?
We've had one request for item 351.
351 has been pulled. Please call the roll on the remainder of the consent agenda.
Ryan? Aye. Hardesty?
Aye.
Maps?
Aye.
Rubio?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The consent agenda is adopted. We'll go to the first time certain item, please. Item number 346.
Proclaim May 5th, 2022 Missing and Murdered Indigenous People Awareness Day.
Colleagues and community members, before we begin, I'd like to note that this proclamation contains language referencing acts of violence that may be upsetting for some listeners. Today, we recognize and build awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous women and people. The official day of awareness is tomorrow, May 5th, but we're reading the proclamation today because there's no council session scheduled for tomorrow. It'll take the work of many to put an end to the violence against Native people and to address the root causes of this violence. We acknowledge the disproportionate rates of Native women who are victimized by domestic and sexual violence, as well as human trafficking. Nationally, American Indian and Alaska Native women are 2.5 times more likely to be raped or be victims of sexual assault compared to other racial groups. We acknowledge that this disproportionate harm is a result of cycles of abuse and violence rooted in generational and historic trauma. And we acknowledge that challenges in non-tribal governments' efforts to collect and share data on these acts of violence make it all the more difficult to understand the full severity of this issue. The City of Portland is working hard to address the critical issue of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Over the last few years, the city has supported vital policy changes surrounding this issue. The Savannahs Act, which directs the Department of Justice to improve training, outreach, and data collection for cases involving missing and murdered Native Americans. The Not Invisible Act, which increases intergovernmental coordination to identify and to address violent crimes against Native people and within Native lands. And the Violence Against Women Reauthorization Act, which expanded housing protections to victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking within the Housing and Urban Development's housing and homelessness programs. This year, in alignment with the Oregon Department of Justice, we've also moved to more inclusive language to acknowledge all people experiencing violence and sexual assault in the Native American community. The City of Portland and the Portland Police Bureau are working to strengthen our relationships and communications with tribal law enforcement. Our police officers will continue to enforce tribal court protective orders, which is a critical step towards improving the safety of Native women. And the city will continue to partner with the Native community and tribal law enforcement agencies to assist in locating Native people who have been reported missing here in the city of Portland. For the last 5 years, the city's Tribal Relations Director, Laura John, has worked with advocates from the Portland Native community to raise awareness of these issues. With the expansion of the Tribal Relations Program, this vital work regarding missing and murdered Indigenous people will be further institutionalized at the City of Portland. I want to thank community members who've assisted in planning this year's virtual and in-person awareness events. Specifically, I'd like to recognize Portland State University's Institute for Tribal Government, the Native Wellness Institute, the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board, Multnomah County Future Generations Collaborative, Native American Youth and Family Center, and Metro Regional Government for your partnership on the city's MMIP Awareness Day events. There's a number of events to participate in this week, including an in-person community event tomorrow, May 5th, from 3 to 8 p.m. at South Hawthorne Waterfront Park. More details on this event and recordings of virtual panels from earlier this week can be found on the Tribal Relations website. Though joining in these events are just the beginning of the work that needs to be done, I urge my colleagues and all Portlanders to join in solidarity with local and national efforts to end the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous people. For Native people who may be in an unsafe situation, please know that there are services available to help you. The National Indigenous Women's Resource Center has a Strong Hearts helpline. The number is 1-877-7-NATIVE or 1-877-762-8483 for help. With that, it's now my honor to turn this over to Tribal Relations Community Liaison, Miranda Michon. Good morning, Miranda.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler. Good morning, Council. It's an honor to be here and really exciting to see you all in person and a pleasure to test out this hybrid format with you all today. My name is Miranda Michon. My pronouns are she, her, and I serve as the community liaison with the Tribal Relations Program here at the City of Portland. Before introducing our panelists today, I want to share briefly about our theme for this week and why we chose it. Our theme for this year's awareness events is Tending Our Roots. By tending our roots, we mean to take a holistic approach to highlight and address the root causes of gendered violence due to settler colonial values, racism, and anti-indigeneity that impact the life-affirming growth and well-being of our youth. We know that generational abuse exists and is perpetuated in our community. Through community conversations, we hope to share valuable knowledge about how our cultural values can offer us a sense of justice and a path to healing. We are excited today to be joined by two wonderful guest speakers. These two women represent strength and cultural values in their communities and are here today to speak to the issue of missing and murdered Indigenous people. Joining us today is Dr. Lahui White-Bear, Assistant Professor at the School of Language, Culture, and Society at Oregon State University. Dr. Whitebear is an enrolled member of the Coastal Band of the Chumash Nation. She received her PhD from OSU in 2020 and is a mother, poet, and activist. We also have with us today Marley Johnson. Marley is of Nez Perce, Cayuse, and Walla Walla descent. She is currently Happy Canyon Princess, and she is a graduate of St. Mary's Academy in Portland and currently a sophomore at Mount Hood Community College. We'll also have the opportunity today to hear from Tribal Relations Director Laura John to provide an update on some of the progress that we've made with policy at the city addressing missing and murdered Indigenous people. For now, I'll hand it off to Dr. Whitebear. Thank you.
Haku, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Louis Whitebear. I use she, her pronouns. I'm enrolled with the Coastal Band of the Chumash Nation, and I also have Waztec and Cochimi ancestry. I'm joining you all from Kalapuya lands, where I live and work over in Corvallis. Today, as we gather to proclaim another MMIP Awareness Day proclamation, I want us to remember that there are people out there waiting to be brought home, both living and dead. There are families and grassroots organizers preparing for searches, making calls, following leads. As I offer these words, we cannot forget that. My advocacy work with MMIP has largely focused on Indigenous women and Two-Spirit people, not because we're the only ones who go missing and are murdered at high rates, but because of the ways in which the settler state has continued to target us directly because of who we are and because of the significant roles we serve in our communities. Yet we know this 500-year-plus crisis is not contained within a specific gender, much like it is not contained within the borders of tribal nations and settler countries. In reality, we still have no idea how bad our communities are impacted. Grassroots organizers do what they can to collect the data, yet settler systems continue to misgender and misrace our people. This has to change. As we continue to think of what is next, because this day can't be the end of advocacy and change, of course, we must look at the root cause of this crisis. We must center the needs of families and grassroots organizers. Data collection and law and policy change takes time. And while those matters are being worked on, which they must be, we have to find ways to intervene until we get there. Families and those still out there need this to happen. Grassroots organizers doing the groundwork need this to happen. The question is, what are we willing to do to create change? Are we ready to face our own internalized issues within our communities? Are we ready to hold those outside our communities accountable for the harm they cause? Are we ready to address meth, heroin, fentanyl controlling the lives of Indigenous people? Are we ready to talk about mental health and heal generational trauma? Are we ready to talk about homophobia, transphobia, anti-indigeneity, and anti-Blackness? Are we ready to talk about pedophilia, domestic violence, and sex trafficking? Are we ready to break the silences around all these issues that hold a tight grip on our communities? Whether or not we are ready, we must move towards addressing these issues. They are all incredibly tied to the conditions that make the MMIP crisis possible. If we cannot break silences and come up with solutions, it will be hard to fully address the root issues that surround MMIP. This day is about creating awareness about how MMIP impacts our communities. This is part of raising that awareness. It is saying, look, we have a serious problem and we cannot wait. We need change now. These families and missing people need us all to step up and intervene at all levels, on ground searches, in legislative halls, in the streets, on city councils, in recovery work, in policy work, in counseling, and in breaking the silence. So I ask again, what are you willing to do to create the changes we need? Thank you for your time.
Marley, if you're still on, you can go ahead and unmute.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you all for being here today. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to share my experience and thoughts on the importance of missing and murdered Indigenous women and people's movement. I want to give another big thank you to Miranda for inviting me to be here today. My name is Marley Johnson. I'm 20 years old, and I'm a descendant of the Nez Perce, Cayuse, and Walla Walla tribes. I'm currently a sophomore at Mount Hood Community College, where I'm working towards my associate's degree. Along with academics, I'm also a member of both the women's softball and basketball teams at Mount Hood. After receiving my associate's degree at MHCC, I hope to transfer to a university where I will major in journalism and continue my athletic career. Along with being a student athlete, I was recently selected to serve as one of the 2022 Happy Canyon Princesses for the Pendleton Roundup. Being selected as one of the Happy Canyon Princesses has been an opportunity for me to represent and act as an ambassador for my tribe. With obtaining such special and important role in my tribe, it has occurred to me the importance of amplifying and advocating for movements such as the IWMP movement. I'm extremely thankful to have a platform such as being one of the Happy Canyon Princesses to express my thoughts and the significance of the MMIW movement. When I reflect on my initial knowledge of this movement, I remember feelings of defeat, confusion, and fear. I feared that I would become another statistic, that I would one day see one of my close friends on a missing flyer that would eventually fade away, that our elders would eventually be gone without a trace. My mind can't and never will be able to comprehend the sheer volume of women and people from my community who have basically vanished without the attention and publicity that our white counterparts receive. Identifying as Afro-Indigenous, I have had the opportunity to understand the lack of value of the lives in both my cultures. I have also been able to see how systematic racism, lack of resources, and overall lack of importance and attention placed on my people plays into issues such as the high quantity of missing Indigenous people. Societal inequities have plagued my community since colonization. The current and historical trauma the Indigenous communities face can breed a vicious cycle of substance abuse disorder and domestic violence, which can lead to missing and murdered Indigenous people. The Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples movement is important because it serves as a platform for Native voices to be heard. As this movement continues to grow, I hope it will continue to highlight the importance of the role of our Indigenous community in this society. I hope through spreading awareness, we can begin to better protect Native lives. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marley, for joining us today. We really appreciate your voice, and Lahui as well, who we've had join us for our Awareness Week events in the past. Hello, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners Hardesty, Ryan, Rubio, and Matz. Appreciate you this today and taking some time out of council. Once again, this is our 5th annual Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Awareness Week. And what we've heard is that this is continuing to be an epidemic, but there is momentum. And I'm really excited to share some of the momentum that we've made and progress that we've made here at the City of Portland and beyond. Our work that we have put forward in helping to raise awareness internally and externally has caught a lot of attention. We are being a role model for other municipalities to also do this work and to join Indian country in addressing the epidemic of missing and murdered Indigenous people. What I'm hearing out there from families, from tribal law enforcement and advocates, victim services, is that more needs to be done. And we have an opportunity to be a part of that. One of the things that I hear quite frequently is the harm and re-traumatization and continuing trauma that families are experiencing when they're not receiving the programs and services that they need, when they're not receiving the attention that they need, or they are not being feeling as if there is empathy, understanding, and compassion when they are making these reports of missing persons. I changed my background today. I wanted to highlight this young woman who's been missing. So I'm trying to pull this back up here. I just closed it on accident. Give me 2 seconds here. Who has been missing for several weeks now in the Portland area. We need to be in collaboration with families when they are making these missing reports. This is Miss Rosemary Medina. She's 14 years old, and she has been reported missing from Portland since March 11th, 2022. And I cannot imagine what her family is going through right now. I have a daughter as well, and I will tell you, similar to what Lahui had mentioned and what Marley had mentioned, is for many of us, our children, particularly our daughters, our granddaughters, our nieces, it's not a matter of if they go missing. It's not a matter of if they're sexually assaulted. It's not a matter if they experience domestic violence. It's a matter of when in our minds, because of our own experiences and because we see the experiences of others around us who are Native. We can be an ally and an advocate in this area as the city of Portland. What we've been able to accomplish in the last year is beginning conversations with the Portland Police Bureau, with Portland Street Response Leadership, and with the Bureau of Emergency Communications, and identifying ways in which we can strengthen our systems. One way that we're talking about doing that is bringing in trainers so that we can provide culturally specific and appropriate services and programs, and that our employees understand how to do that if they are dealing with a Native family or a case of a missing Native person. We just recently met with Commissioner Matz. Thank you so much for that time, and meeting with the Confederated Tribes of Umatilla Indians, and one of their council members who heads up their 911 call system and is also responsible for the MMIP portfolio work that they're doing over there, has expressed interest in partnering with BOIC to do an exchange between our 911 employees and theirs, to learn from each other, to create opportunities for partnerships and identifying ways in which we can engage in mutual aid between our two law enforcement agencies and emergency response call centers. My team and it's so nice to say my team and I for the first time coming to council. Miranda Mission and Stone Hudson have been amazing. Thank you, council, for supporting the resources to bring them on board. They've been amazing. I'm so impressed. We will be attending the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians Conference in 2 weeks, and we'll be participating in their MMIP discussions. We've also been invited by Yakima Elder Patsy Whitefoot, who we've had come to council in the past, to attend the National Congress of American Indians MMIP task force that will be occurring in June. So we will be there, bringing forward what we are doing as a local municipality to be a model for other municipalities, and for tribal leaders to go back to their local governments that are near their communities to say, hey, look at what Portland's doing. We'd love for you to do that too. We are also beginning a conversation internally, co-led with Brody Sargent from the Portland Police Bureau Equity Office, having an internal conversation in partnership with the Office of Equity and Human Rights around the issue of collecting better data. In particular, what are some ways in which we can address the current challenge that officers face in not having a standard operating procedure in which to verify someone's race and ethnicity. So at this point in time, that race and ethnicity is being assumed by that officer. And that's creating a big challenge in having good data, not just for Native people, but for all people across the board. So we're having those conversations now to try to identify ways in which we can strengthen that system, the ways in which tribal relations and the Office of Equity and Human Rights can support the Police Bureau in accomplishing improvement to their collection and reporting of race data. So I'm very excited about that conversation, and I hope to have a great update to share with you next year when we come back. As you all are aware, I do want to put this on the record for those that are tuning in. This last year, we had a number of bills that were included in the City of Portland's formal state and federal legislative agenda. We are continuing to put that lens on our analysis of upcoming bills in the state legislature and in Congress to identify items that we can be supportive of that provide services, improved programs, additional funding and resources to address this issue nationally, whether it's in urban, rural, or reservation areas. What I would like to follow up with and let you all know is we'll be working with PPB to reissue the memo that went to sworn officers a few years ago, because we know that there's been a lot of turnover at the Police Bureau, to ensure that all officers understand that they need to give full faith and credit to tribal court orders. We are in conversation right now with state leadership to include content in the State Police Academy DPSST training to make sure that officers are trained and knowledgeable about tribal law enforcement and some of those challenges that exist, such as the lack of access to particular databases that we use that tribes don't have access to, and vice versa, which is creating a big gap in communication and being able to partner and engage in mutual aid. And then lastly, we are partnering with the Oregon Department of Justice Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Coordinator. This was a position that was funded and recently hired in the past year. Ms. Cedar Wilkie Gillette has been amazing. We've already had her and I a number of conversations where she's been able to reach out directly to me to ask questions about our policies and procedures and get insight into how we are seeing this issue from a city perspective. Thank you so much, Council, always for your support. We appreciate it and look forward to continuing to address this issue as a team, as a city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura, so much. It's a real pleasure to work under your leadership. Thank you, Lahui and Marley, for your wisdom and words today. I will pass it back to Mayor Wheeler and Council. Thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you for the great presentation, colleagues. Commissioner Mapps?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, colleagues, I'm honored to join you in proclaiming May 5th, 2022 to be Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Awareness Day. On this day, we remember the thousands of Native Americans who have been lost to violence, and we recommit ourselves to working with tribal nations to end that violence. Today, Native peoples face an epidemic of violence. Homicide is the third leading cause of death of Native American women. On some reservations, Native women are murdered at a rate more than 10 times the national average. 4 out of 5 Indigenous women have experienced violence in their lives. And today, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Oregon is investigating the murders of 8 Indigenous people and the disappearance of an additional 11 Native Americans connected to Oregon. What's happening to Indigenous people on reservations across this nation and in the state of Oregon is unconscionable and outrageous, and we must do better. It's also time to recognize that some progress has been made. For example, last year, Oregon took a big step forward in the fight against violence against Native Americans when tribes were granted access to data from the National Crime Information Center. Still, it is past time we take a comprehensive approach to protecting the lives of Native Americans. We can do that by embracing violence prevention strategies that bolster tribal autonomy, improve coordination amongst law enforcement agencies, and expand access to culturally appropriate support services. I'm committed to working with the good folks over in the Office of Tribal Relations to meet these goals. Colleagues, for these reasons and more, I'm proud to join you in proclaiming May 5th, 2022 to be Missing and Murdered Indigenous Peoples Awareness Day. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank you, Mayor, and Miranda Michon for bringing this important proclamation forward and for raising awareness about the ongoing missing and murdered Indigenous people crisis, and give deep gratitude to Laura John and the panelists, Dr. Whitebear and Marley Johnson, who shared important comments today and who are also working hard to advocate and raise awareness in the community every day. The high rates of violence are shocking, and the inaction is simply indefensible. Our values and our conscience demand that we cannot be silent, nor can we be inactive about it. And this crisis, as we saw today, is happening in our own backyard, and we all have a responsibility to be informed and activated about this horror. I'm so glad to hear that we are making some progress at the state level and here at the city. And for my part, I will continue to advocate for improving data collection and cross-jurisdictional partnerships, but it's still not nearly enough to match the urgent need for action. So I look forward to learning from the Native community and advocates about how we as a city council can do more. And some of that was talked about today. And effective action starts with facts and education. So I want to reiterate what our guest, the mayor, said, and encourage everyone to participate in the events and the actions that are taking place this month to raise our collective understanding and our advocacy. So thank you again, everyone, for giving a strong voice and call to action about the important work ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me start by thanking Director Laura John. I also had a moment of joy when you introduced your team, because I know how long and hard you worked as an individual to make sure these issues were front and center for this city council. So I continue to applaud the great work that you're doing. And what a great addition to the team, having Miranda Michon here. And your voice was really eloquent in actually laying out the cause that we are here to discuss today. I want to make sure that we are not just being performative in this conversation and really talk about what do we need to have as part of our legislative agenda going into the next legislative session that will ensure that when we come next year, we're not continuing to talk about the lack of access to information, the lack of accountability for holding people accountable when restraining orders are issued, the lack of not believing a victim when they say that they have had this lived experience. And so I just want to make sure that we are working early so that the values that we've discussed today are clearly reflected in our legislative agenda next year. But in addition to that, as you know, we're in the process of hiring a civilian training dean for Portland Police Bureau, and I would think that we would want a training dean that actually would be grounded in how we ensure that we are creating opportunity for healing and accountability in our Native community. And I apologize. I think Miranda, I mispronounced your last name, so my apologies for that. I will do better next time. Let me just say that this is a day of really reflecting on what we've been able to do collectively as a community, but also I hear really clearly it's also a call to action about what it is we still need to be pushing and moving forward and being unafraid of actually calling it as we see it. So I applaud the incredible work that's been done so far, and I look forward to this continued partnership to make sure that there is no missing woman or girl in our community ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for bringing this forward. Director John, Miranda, and your team, bold exclamation points, caps, your team at the Tribal Relations Office who helped organize those before us today. As always is the case with the Native American Indigenous community, this epidemic, like all numbers when it comes to data with the Native American community, is underreported. It is not a matter of fact, as it's if and it's when. When you mention those comments, it's not a matter of if, it's when. That's your lived experience, and I believe you. And I really appreciate that you're working directly with our first responders. It was very compelling to hear your testimony before us today. And thank you, Dr. Whitebear and Marley Johnson, St. Mary's grad and Happy Canyon Princess and current student scholar at Mount Hood Community College. Thank you both for being here today and sharing yourselves with us. Dr. Whitebear, your words, at this moment we have people in pain who are searching for their loved ones at this moment. And then using the real numbers, a 500-year crisis inflicted upon your community by the settlers. Are we ready to talk about the addiction crisis, the mental health crisis? I stand with you, since to recover we must get out of denial. Thank you for sharing your truth and your wisdom. My heart is definitely full as I reflect with my colleagues on what we heard today. My thoughts are with your families and those who've lost a parent, a sibling, a friend, and a loved one. I stand in solidarity with Native American families, Indigenous nations who continue to challenge the silence, the inaction in response to this crisis. I continue to urge our public safety bureaus to continue to work with our community partners in consultation with tribal governments to address this crisis. I'm so grateful to be aligned with the City Council as empowering Director John and her team to take action and lead us forward. Before I conclude, a personal acknowledgement of my niece, Tycee Mason, at the Indian Health Board, who always has her uncle's ear. Thank you again for being here this morning.
Thank you, Commissioner Ryan, and I'd like to add my thanks as well to Director Laura John for her outstanding leadership of our Tribal Relations Office, and Miranda Mission, thank you very much for help coordinating today's important events. Dr. Whitebear, Marley Johnson, thank you for your heartfelt and important testimony and lived experience. We appreciate it. It's now my honor on behalf of the Portland City Council to read a proclamation that you all helped draft on behalf of us and the city. Whereas the City of Portland joins a growing chorus of local, state, tribal, and national governments in supporting the National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous People. And whereas the lasting effects of colonization and a history of oppressive policies directly correlate to the rise of violence against Indigenous women and girls in the United States, Canada, Mexico, Central America, and all U.S. territories. And whereas the disappearances and murders of Indigenous people is directly connected to domestic and other forms of violence, sexual assault, trafficking, and a history of childhood, intergenerational, and historic trauma. And whereas our Indigenous community recognizes that we're all related to each other, to the earth, and to those who crawl, swim, and fly. And in consideration of this, we've chosen to honor all our relations with inclusivity and align with the state of Oregon by modifying the scope of MMIWR to MMIP. And whereas these acts of violence and corresponding oversight and neglect of government law enforcement is a continued form of genocide and is a direct threat to the tribal sovereignty recognized by the City of Portland. And whereas the City of Portland recognizes that the issues of missing and murdered Indigenous people are not isolated to reservations or rural communities, but impact urban areas like the Portland metropolitan region. Whereas the City of Portland urges Portlanders to wear red every 5th of the month to show solidarity, support, and to continue efforts to raise awareness about the needs to address the systemic obstacles that continue to the occurrence of missing and murdered Indigenous people. And whereas the City of Portland continues to advocate to our state and congressional delegations for legislation and policy to address the crisis and follow the guidance of Native leaders. And whereas all Indigenous nations stand together in solidarity against sexual violence and domestic abuse and work to address the root causes of these persistent systemic issues and protect our relatives from further harm. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim May 5th, 2022 to be missing and murdered Indigenous Peoples Awareness Day in Portland, and encourage all residents to observe this day. Thank you all. We'll go to the next time certain item, please. Item number 347.
Proclaim May 2022 to be Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Colleagues, today we honor the history and contributions of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders by proclaiming May as AAPI Heritage Month. AAPI encompasses the entire continent of Asia and the island regions of Melanesia, Micronesia, and Polynesia, representing a broad array of languages, ethnicities, and religious beliefs. This proclamation, while important, is not enough to honor the immense cultural, civic, and economic contributions of this community to the city of Portland. And especially now, with the increase in hatred and discrimination towards the AAPI community during the pandemic, we need to remain a strong supporter and ally to these communities. A recent survey by the Oregon Values and Beliefs Center revealed that nearly 50% of Asian Oregonians had a racial slur used against them, 50%. The Oregon Department of Justice revealed reports of hate crimes spiked by 366% in 2020. 20% were reported by Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Based on the survey results, 33% of participants, or more than 50,000 Asian Oregonians, said they had reduced the amount of time spent in the community engaging with family or friends, physical activity levels, or the number of trips to the store because of a race-based bias incident or a hate crime. I'll be clear. Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders are integral to Portland and are welcome here. I will continue to prioritize your success and your safety. Your contributions are what makes Portland great. We must ensure that new ordinances and policies are created with a racial equity lens centered on the AAPI community and the various other ethnic groups that make up the identity of our city. I'd like to now introduce Rasheen Kurian from the HAPA, Asian and Pacific Islanders of Portland Affinity Group, and Shana Hobbs from the Filipino American City Employees Affinity Group to introduce our presenters. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Morning. Thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioner Mapps, colleagues, commissioners, and friends for joining us this morning. My name is Shana Hobbs, and I'm here representing the Filipino American City Employees Resource Group, also known as FACE. We are here today in partnership and solidarity with Aapi to celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Over the last few years, there has been an increase in acts of violence and hatred toward our AAPI community. We must acknowledge this unfortunate reality, but we also want to focus today in the month of May on celebrating the joy and beauty within our community.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Roshan Kurian, and I'm here today representing the city's HAPA Asian Pacific Islander Employee Resource Group, also known as Aapi. We have an amazing lineup of speakers and performances from the Portland metropolitan area's AAPI communities to celebrate our cultures that contribute so much to our region. First, we'll kick it off. Let me introduce our honored speaker, Subhashini Ganesan. Subhashini is a curator, arts administrator, choreographer, and former creative laureate of Portland from 2018 to 2021. Her contemporary works include deep collaborations with acclaimed artists and art organizations worldwide. Subhashini founded New Expressive Works in 2012. Through residency, artist conversations, and performance seasons, this vibrant performing arts venue celebrates bold new works created by multicultural independent performing artists. Subhashini is an adjunct professor at Pacific University teaching arts advocacy. She is also an active community advisory committee member of the Interstate Firehouse Cultural Center and serves on the board of directors for the James F. and Marion L. Miller Foundation and the Portland Parks Foundation. Subashini serves as Oregon Arts Commissioner as well. Subashini, the virtual stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Subashini Ganesan Forbes. I'm of Tamil origin, which originates from the southeastern state of Tamil Nadu in India. My parents immigrated to Singapore, a tiny but mighty city, state, country in Southeast Asia in the late 1960s, where I was born. I eventually immigrated to the States from Singapore over 30 years ago. Since 2001, I have called Portland and Oregon my home. As an immigrant from Southeast Asia with South Asian heritage, as a woman, a choreographer, arts advocate, community leader, teacher, wife, daughter, and friend, it is an absolute honor to be a part of this Asian American Pacific Island Heritage Month proclamation event. In these times when even the highest court in our country seems to be moving in the direction of dismantling human rights, I'm grateful to spend some time celebrating the plurality of our collective history, making visible the immeasurable contributions that the AAPI community has brought to the USA and Oregon, and most importantly, to continue dismantling the divisive rhetoric that is fomenting all around us as we need to build bridges across communities to uplift our citizenry. First off, who are we? Who are this Asian American Pacific Island communities? We consist of approximately 50 ethnic groups speaking over 100 languages with connections to, I'm going to name a few: Chinese, South Asian, Japanese, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean, Hawaiian, and other Asian and Pacific Island ancestries. Over 24 million Americans, or 7.3% of the USA population, are AAPI, and about 2/3 of us identify with our specific ethnicity or country of origin. I, of course, wanted to know how May became designated month for our AAPI communities. It was first created by Congress in 1992. The Heritage Month falls in May because of several historical milestones, including the 1843 arrival of the first Japanese immigrants and Chinese laborers' enormous contributions to building the Transcontinental Railroad, which was finished in May 1869. Some other things to note about this Heritage Month: as of 2000, Asian and Pacific Islander became two separate racial categories on the US Census. There's some Native Hawaiian and Pacific Island scholars who think it's really important to distinguish Pacific Islanders from Asian Americans and to not lump these very diverse groups under some kind of pan-ethnic racial umbrella. Catherine Sinisa Choi, professor at University California, Berkeley, of Asian American and Asian Diaspora Studies and Comparative Ethnic Studies, says, it's difficult to honor an Asian American experience, given what an enormous population the category applies to. There's continued examination of this culturally flattening effect that creates the risk of, and here I'm quoting Choi again, the erasure of various individual ethnic groups, the diversity of languages, and other parts of the culture and their different contemporary political issues. In Oregon, our Asian and Pacific Island populations is increasing not only in size, but in diversity. Asian Indian, Vietnamese, and Korean Americans are now among the 5 largest API populations in the US. The number of Southeast Asian Americans, including those who are Cambodian, Hmong, and Laotian, has grown significantly, as has the number of Pacific Islander Americans, including those who are Native Hawaiian, Samoan, and Guamian. The AAPI community impacts all avenues of life in our city and beyond. We're politically, economically, culturally, and socially active and hold leadership positions across all these sectors. We're community members in our neighborhoods and bring our strength, diverse voices, empathy, compassion, and love to engagements with our fellow Oregonians. At the same time, it doesn't go without notice how much our community has dealt with in the last 2 years and how the ripple effects of racially driven rhetoric over these 2 years continue to negatively affect our communities. This survey was mentioned a little earlier. Of course, it was published less than a week ago, and it provides some grim statistics. Oregon Values and Beliefs Center partnered with culturally specific community organizations, including the Asian Health and Service Center, to gauge prevalence and attitudes toward race-based harassment and hate crimes in the state. The survey, conducted from October 2021 to January 2022, found that in most instances, roughly half or more than half of the nearly 550 Asian residents surveyed reported race-based harassment. They showed 19% of respondents saying they or a family member were threatened with physical violence because of their race. Another 15% had been denied service because of their race, and 8% said theirs or family members' property had been marked by racist graffiti. The same percentage of respondents reported they or a family member were assaulted or injured because of race. Those who participated in this polling say more awareness of race-based bias and hate crimes is needed throughout the state, as well as expanded support services. And as we all know, as recent as last week, we saw the vandalizing of several storefronts in our own Jade district that seem racially motivated. In the midst of all this public-facing challenges, it is important to recognize that our city and community come together constantly to celebrate, support, and create safe space for many of our Asian American Pacific Islander communities. It's with a joy to see New Year's in the Parks return as an event last weekend. It's also absolutely thrilling to note that last week, this council unanimously approved the transfer of 82nd Avenue from state to city ownership under a new Building a Better 82nd initiative, because much needed improvement needs to be made for that roadway to be brought up to city standards and reduce the number of crashes along it. This is a significant investment, I believe, in our city's AAPI community, as there's a rich, diverse, and active AAPI community along the southeast corridor of 82nd Avenue. In conclusion, really, I feel like we keep moving through the same recurring themes year after year when we launch the Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I think of how can we understand and celebrate and accept Asian American Pacific Islanders who live and participate fully in Oregon and our country. I want us to think about how we can understand and reduce the way in which so many people visibly and vocally wonder, where are you really from? When your Asian American and Pacific Islander friends have been and continue to contribute as Oregonians for decades. Also, how do we understand to keep moving into compassion and building bridges so that the plurality of our communities can be celebrated and made visible without feeling like we need to conform or drop our cultural uniqueness in order to belong as Americans? Together, we can do this. And I'm so grateful to be celebrating the beginning of this Heritage Month with all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sebastian. Apologies for mispronouncing your name. Next up, we have an amazing Polynesian dance troupe, Teva Oriata, who will be performing a traditional Tahitian dance to celebrate and honor the Polynesian community that have long resided in Portland. Council Clerk, if you could please start the video for Teva Oriata.
Aloha, Yorana Mai Tato, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angie Jackman, and I am the Ra'atira, or owner of Teva Oriata Polynesian Dance Troupe. We are a local Polynesian dance school located right here in the Cedar Hill Shopping Center in the Portland metro area. We are a Polynesian dance school that focuses on the culture, the language, and of course the dancing of various islands around Polynesia. Thank you so much for including us, Teva Oriata, today in your Heritage Month event. We're so grateful that we'll be able to bring a beautiful dance to you today. And so this song that we bring you today is entitled Ta'uhere, and which means my love. In Polynesia, the songs are not only beautiful to watch and dance, but it brings a lot of meaning and stories. We try to invoke feeling in our audience with the songs that we bring, and this song especially it is very special to me in that my ra'atira, or my teacher in Hawaii, she's a Tahitian instructor, and she wrote this song as a gift for her daughter on her wedding day. It talks about the love that two people have for each other, how each sparkles in each other's eyes, how their hands will be held together forever, and just overall love. And what makes this song extra special for me is that my teacher recently passed away, and her daughter had gifted Teva Oriata this song and dance so we could share it with the world. And thank you so much for allowing us to share this song with you today, and I hope you enjoy it. Maruru, mahalo, and thank you.
Thank you, Teva Oriata, for that beautiful performance. Today, we're honored to share a video dedicated to AAPI Heritage Month by local Filipino martial arts group, Rose City Eskrima. This 4-minute video explores how local chef and Rose City Eskrima founder, Carlo Lamagna, and his students are bringing new life to the Philippines' national martial art here in Portland. Council Clerk, please start the video for Rose City Eskrima.
Hey folks, my name is Carlo Lamagna. I'm the chef owner of Magna Cucina, as well as the founder of Rose City Eskrima. I started Rose City Eskrima during the pandemic because I wanted to teach Filipino martial arts, as well as find a way to have some form of physical activity during those trying times. I've been practicing arnis since I was about 15 or 16 years old. I'm 41 now, so if that's anything, that's about the amount of time that I've been doing it for. I was fortunate enough to study in the Philippines under both Guru Elmer Ibanez, who is the founder of Lescas, and a protege of Benjamin Luna Lema, who's a grandmaster of Lightning Scientific Arnis International, which I've also had the pleasure of training with. The reason I started teaching, besides, physical activity in the pandemic, is I kind of wanted to revisit my roots in Filipino martial culture, and also to spread the knowledge of Filipino martial arts. It so happened that I attracted a lot of Filipino American students that wanted to reconnect with their culture and their heritage. And an amazing way to do that is through the arts that were founded in the Philippines. Arnis, Eskrima, or Kali, as the art is known by those many different names, all have their roots in a bladed weapon system, but that have been adapted to a blunt weapon such as a stick, and which is more commonly seen nowadays because of restrictions that were put upon them of carrying blades back in the days of colonization during the Spanish occupation. I think it's really important to understand that beyond its weapon culture, Arnis really has its roots based in community as well. It helped bring together many different individuals from different walks of life under kind of one banner, if you will. And it's amazing to see that in this modern day that we're moving forward with everything and spreading the art as we know and as we love it, and that our community is growing here in Portland, Oregon, and to be able to share that with everybody is a really important thing for all of us. Rose City Eskrima is open to all. It's free. I don't charge anybody solely based that. I really just do it for the love of the martial culture of the Philippines. And I'm very proud to be able to teach and to pass on the knowledge that Guru Elmer and Monk Ben has passed on to me. So yeah, that's the story of Rose City Eskrima.
That's awesome. Thank you. We'd like to extend a big thank you to Subhashini, Teva Oriata, and Rose City Eskrima for sharing your beautiful words and performances with us today. Aapi would also like to extend an invitation to all city employees for a professional development training with speaker Jenny Chai on May 10th from noon to 1:30 p.m. The training is entitled How to Break the Bamboo Ceiling. It's intended to help AAPI professionals reframe cultural norms to help us unlock our leadership potential. We will also schedule a follow-up discussion soon after. If you have any questions about the event, please contact Ning Jiang at ning.jiang@portlandoregon.gov. Thanks.
And as part of AAPI Heritage Month, the Filipino American city employees will be hosting a celebration open to all city employees and their families on Thursday, May 19th at the Portland Building. This celebration will highlight traditional Filipino games and foods and will be a fun time to reconnect with other city employees in person. There will be Filipino food, door prizes, and karaoke. Look out for an invitation coming soon. Thank you again to all who have joined us today to celebrate AAPI Heritage Month. I'll now turn it over to Mayor Wheeler and Council.
Thank you very much. That was a terrific presentation. Before I read the proclamation, I'll ask my colleagues for any comments they have, and we'll go in reverse order from what we did on the last one. Commissioner Ryan, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for bringing this forward. And the wonderful group of community members led by Shayna and Roshan from our own city group known as Aapi to celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And thank you to those who spoke about their experiences in Oregon and what it means to celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. 100 languages. And then why May? I now know. There were a couple examples. The Chinese labor connected to the Transcontinental Railroad was completed in May of 1869. I also was appreciative that you brought up the recent report that I've just seen glimpses of, and I want to read it in detail, of this that really points out the spike in race-based harassment that really took off since COVID. And thank you for sharing the findings from this research. It was very important for us to listen to. And you acknowledged the recent celebration. Congratulations, Commissioner Hardesty, the transfer of 82nd from the state to the city, the heart of the Jade District. And from the islands, the beautiful dance. And as my sister-in-law always says, it's a prayer in motion, and it really felt like that. It grounded me just witnessing it even on Zoom in the council chamber, this virtual room we're in. The Filipino martial arts. Thank you, teacher. What a gift you are to the Filipino community and to our city. And the fact that you're so inclusive on who you'll serve was a great story. All the stories today pulled at my heartstrings, and they reminded me of my own stories of becoming an ally and understanding the vast, vast, vast Asian Pacific Islander culture. For me, it really took off in the late 70s when officials at the time chose to funnel all Vietnamese and Laotian refugees to one single high school, and that was Roosevelt, where I was attending. Suddenly, we had 300 new students, and it was amazing, and it was awesome, and it was life-changing. And from that time, I have some lifelong friends, including Mr. Lee Po Cha, the leader of ERCO, who was a few years younger than me at Roosevelt. I've also been lucky to have a sister-in-law, which I mentioned earlier, and my nephew and niece, who brought the Hawaiian and Filipino culture to our family. And I want to end by recognizing the Tongan community. I know I was with you, Commissioner Maps, shortly after the tsunami, and it was so powerful to be in their presence as they were experiencing the grief, very intense grief, because they literally couldn't even be in touch with their loved ones at that time. And so, and Mayor, seeing you recently at the consulate opening, we have a very vibrant and very diverse and very rich Asian and Pacific Islander community. And it's such an honor to be on City Council, to have opportunities to get to know everyone better. And for me, it's definitely been the Tongan community over the last few months. So I just want to say thank you for bringing this forward. Here's to May being Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Here's to wearing red on the 5th, which means I need one more red shirt. This is like the only one I could find. So anyway, I join you all in saying I approve. Do I approve anything? We're just making comments. We're not voting. It's so fun to look at all of you live. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a proclamation.
Instead
Thank
of being
you.
in my home going with what's going on. All right.
Thanks, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for what an incredible presentation to Council today. I want to start my remarks by thanking the Mayor. In March of 2020, when COVID first hit, when we had the first opportunity to have relief dollars go out the door, we prioritized the AAPI community because we already had heard about the increased hate, the increased stupidity of people around what COVID actually exposed, and what it really exposed was the underlying racism that is really in the DNA of America. And I have to say, it was one of my proudest moments to be in that very first economic meeting with Mayor Wheeler, and having no argument with anybody about prioritizing AAPI community members and prioritizing them getting the very first relief that was available. And talk about a proud moment at council. That was one of my prouder moments. I will say that I've been fortunate in my life to have a lot of deep relationships with AAPI community members. And it's kind of ironic how nobody becomes a minority until they hit American soil. And then all of a sudden we have little boxes that we like to put people into, and we just kind of check a box and say, okay, this is who you are. What we know about the Asian Pacific Islander community is they are diverse. They are the gambit, and they have brought so much joy into our community here in the Portland metro area. But I want to talk a little bit about how political representation matters, because I was privileged to be around when Apano was a thought in the eye of some crazy person who actually thought Asian Pacific Islanders could not only get together, they could organize themselves, and they could actually demand that they have representation in places that they had not experienced in Oregon before. And I have to say, even today, when I go into a space like Apano, and I see 20-something and 30-something-year-old change agents, what I know is that if we don't mess it up irreversibly before they take over, our future is well assured. And Asian Pacific Islanders will continue to lead in boardrooms, in legislative rooms, and all over the state of Oregon. I hate that when we take these opportunities to actually applaud a month, we also have to actually acknowledge the racism that is actually embedded in how the United States works. I look forward to a day where we can actually applaud communities without reminding people of how all of us don't have the same experience in the United States of America. So, Mayor, I will always have that fond memory, because we walked in that room and we just knew that this was the right thing to do. And it was the right thing to do, and it continues to be the right thing to do. So today, I applaud everyone who is represented by the AAPI community, and just say, I see you, and I am so proud of what you're doing, whether it's in political arenas, business arenas, et cetera. You got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Hardesty. Appreciate it. Commissioner Rubio.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Mapps and Mayor Wheeler at FACE and Happy for bringing this important proclamation forward. And thank you to our former Creative Laureate, Subhashini Ganesan, for your important words, and to the dancers and martial arts teacher for your great presentations. The term AAPI includes so many groups and cultures with deep and different histories and contributions and stories, each deserving recognition and celebration. And I greatly appreciated Suba's words, because I always felt a bit uncomfortable, and it have a strong pull to recognize and celebrate each community on its own. So I appreciate, I know I'm saying appreciate a lot, but it's true. I appreciate all the comments that we've heard today, and in part because it's something that we experience also in my own community, the Latinx community. And the COVID-19 pandemic has made some of those these experiences during this time uncomfortably binding, as hate and racism have been directed towards AAPI community members, while simultaneously experiencing cultural erasure. And the data that we just heard is terrible, but it also shows us where our work is in this state. And that is why this year's theme of advancing leaders through collaboration really resonates with me. We already know that better things become possible when we co-create a decision-making table that includes diverse voices that are representative of today's Portland. We know these things. And every appointment or election to the many committees, commissions, or councils that keep our city and our state functioning is an opportunity to build belonging together. And it's also about leadership that allies can show, standing up and interrupting racism, challenging implicit bias, supporting community members, supporting AAPI-owned businesses and artists. It's about the leadership we as a council need to show investing in community, in economic development, as well as the physical spaces where community come together and where communities are concentrated. So this month, I just want to echo all the comments of my colleagues and encourage us all to commit to uplifting the vast and diverse leadership, creativity, entrepreneurship that exists within the AAPI communities, and also to lifting up those who are leading with their strength, resiliency, and values to make their communities and our city better.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio. Commissioner Mapps.
Colleagues, I'd like to start out today by thanking our invited guests for the powerful testimony they shared with us today. And I'd also like to say that I am delighted to join you in proclaiming May 2022 to be Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. During this month, we come together to recognize the history, achievements, and unmet needs of Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders. People of Asian descent have been here in Oregon since the 1850s. Our Asian ancestors worked mines in eastern Oregon. They built the railroads. They were farmers and fishermen. In other words, they built the Oregon that we all inherited and love today. Despite the contribution Asian Americans have made to our community, our Asian American neighbors have endured a long history of discrimination. For example, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 banned Chinese immigrants from these United States. And during World War II, in our own city, Portlanders of Japanese descent were rounded up and imprisoned at the Portland Expo Center before being shipped off to internment camps. And even today, Asian American communities endure harassment and violence. Now, while racism may have been part of our city's past, racism must not be part of our community's future. That's why today this council stands with our Asian American and Pacific Islander neighbors in condemning and working to end acts of violence against the Asian American community. And there are other challenges which must be overcome too. The American dream remains out of reach for far too many Asian American families. And that's why I'd like to thank our community partners who support Portland's API community, especially Apano, ERCO, the Asian Family Center, the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, the Vietnamese Community of Oregon, the Japanese American Society, and the Philippine American Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for the work you do. You represent Portland at our best. Colleagues, for these reasons and more, I'm proud to join you in declaring May 2022 to be Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month here in Portland, Oregon. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mapps. Thank you, colleagues. I just want to acknowledge what a great presentation we heard today. That was amazing. And the martial arts demonstration was phenomenal. And Commissioner Hardesty and I were wondering how much training it would take to get so good that you can do that. And it wasn't lost on me they were using sticks, but they said what they really do is use knives. That was really impressive for me to see. I also just want to acknowledge that we have great leadership here at City Hall from the AAPI community. And since Bobby Lee is sitting here in the council chambers this morning, I want to acknowledge him in particular as my chief of staff. He's guided me extremely well, and I'm always mindful of the fact, Bobby, that you struggle along with the community, and you see the same issues that the AAPI community sees, and yet you continue to lead with style and with grace and with dignity, and you help do everything we do in this administration. None of the good stuff could happen without you. The bonehead maneuvers, that's all me. The good stuff, that's all you, Bobby Lee. Thank you for your leadership. I also want to not only thank our inspiring guests for joining us today, but also thank the members of the HAPA Asian and Pacific Islanders Affinity Group, as well as the Filipino American City Employees Affinity Group, not only for helping to craft today's presentation, but also for their leadership in crafting the proclamation that I will now read on behalf of the Portland City Council. Whereas the City of Portland takes pride in joining Americans throughout the country in recognizing May 2022 as Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And whereas Portland is home to more than 56,000 community members who trace their roots to the Pacific Islands in Asia. And whereas Filipinos make up one of the largest ethnic groups in the United States, with over 23,000 residing in the Portland metro region. And whereas the Pacific Islander, Native Hawaiian, Southeast Asian, South Asian, and East Asian American communities are proud of their diversity and draw strength from their rich cultures and traditions. And whereas Portland's AAPI members come from a complex and diverse mix of many languages, ethnicities, and faiths, including, but not limited to, Buddhism, Christianity, Catholicism, Confucianism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, Shintoism, and Sikhism. And whereas in 2001, the U.S. experienced a 339% rise in anti-Asian hate crimes, with a disproportionate number against women. And whereas anti-Asian hate crimes were spurred on by references to the COVID-19 viruses as the Chinese virus, Wuhan virus, and Kung flu, in place of the scientific name for the viruses issued by the World Health Organization. And whereas Portland City Council on March 2, 2017 adopted Resolution 37277, which declared the City of Portland a welcoming city, a sanctuary city, and an inclusive city for all. And whereas Portland City Code Section 23.01.010 states that, quote, "It is policy of the City of Portland to eliminate discrimination based on race, religion, color, sex, marital status, familiar status, national origin, age, mental or physical disability, sexual orientation, gender identity, or source of income." Such discrimination poses a threat to the health, safety, and general welfare of the citizens of Portland and menaces the institutions and foundation of our community, unquote. And whereas City Council in 2016 adopted Code Section 3.131.010, establishing the new Portlander Policy Commission to, quote, "advise the city on policies and practices to integrate immigrant and refugee communities' voices and needs into the provision of city services, city decision-making, and civic engagement in Portland," unquote. And whereas City Council acknowledges the challenges faced by all Portlanders during the COVID-19 crisis, while specifically people of Asian American and Asian Pacific Islander descent have been subject to hate crimes, we acknowledge that Black and Indigenous communities are disproportionately impacted by the highest infection and fatality rates due to the health disparities perpetrated by systemic racism. And whereas City Council believes that all immigrants and refugees are critical additions to the social and economic well-being of our city. And whereas City Council unanimously passed Resolution 37492 on June 17th, 2020, adopting anti-racism and equity as two of the City of Portland's core values. And whereas Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month is an opportunity for all individuals, communities, and organizations to recognize AAPI contributions, development, and defense for our country, as well as cultural, civic, and economic significance to Portland for over 150 years. And whereas Portland, through dialogue with representatives from Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, continues to address the needs and concerns of its community members and remains committed to seeking solutions to problems such as prejudice, discrimination, and violence. Now, therefore, I, Ted Wheeler, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim May 2022 to be Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month in Portland and encourage all residents to learn, reflect, and celebrate the historical and present contributions that Asian American and Pacific Islander people have on our community. Thank you all. Thank you. And with that, we will move to the next time certain item, please, item 348, which is a report.
Appoint Sam Rodriguez to the Prosper Board for term to expire August 2nd, 2023.
Commissioners, this morning I'm requesting council confirmation of Sam Rodriguez for an appointment to the Prosper Portland Board. Sam is an exceptional candidate for this position, and I believe he will be a strong contributor to Prosper Portland's critical mission of creating greater shared prosperity in Portland. As you know, Prosper Portland is governed by a 5-member volunteer board whose members are appointed by the mayor and approved by City Council. Though normal terms are for 3 years, this appointment will be to fill the remainder of a term from a previous commissioner who resigned from the board early in 2022. Sam is an experienced residential property developer and architect here in Portland, and he's currently Senior Managing Director of Mill Creek Residential. He's been responsible for developing and building over 3,000 apartment homes in the Portland market. Sam is currently Chair of the Portland Design Commission, a board member of Oregon Smart Growth, and a member of the Archdiocese of Portland Building Committee. I'm confident that Sam's real estate development and planning expertise, significant experience in the Portland market, and commitment to giving back to our community will enable him to be a valuable contributor to Prosper's work. Sam, we appreciate your willingness to apply your knowledge, skills, and abilities on Prosper's board. Sam, now I'll turn it over to you to briefly introduce yourself and share your motivations for serving in this important capacity. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioners. I'm honored to be asked to serve in this capacity. I believe that I have a modest contribution to make, and as the Mayor said, I have developed a whole lot of apartment buildings and apartment units in this market, and but I also believe that giving back to the community is just as important as the economic activity that we as a company provide. And I also believe that you either participate or shut up. So with that, I always like to participate to the best of my capacity. So with that, I briefly, you've had a wonderful 2 previous events, and I don't think I can top that, so I will just stop right there.
Thank you, Sam. Colleagues, any questions of Sam or comments? Commissioner Ryan, did you have a comment?
Sure. I just want to say, perhaps it's because of my assignments, but Sam, you were one of my first meetings after I was sworn in, and I just find you to be so purposeful, so persistent. You're definitely a critical friend, and I think having someone with your insight and your passion further engaged in the city is definitely the right person at the right time. So thanks for your interest and your service.
Commissioner Ryan, I just wanted to say it's not so much critical as passionate. So
critical is a positive word when you're a theater major back in the day. So anyway, I appreciate it.
Yep.
Keelan, do we have any public testimony on this report?
No one signed up.
I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move we accept the report as presented.
Commissioner Hardesty
Second.
moves. Commissioner Ryan seconds. Any further discussion? Keelan, please call the roll on the report.
Ryan.
Thank you, Sam. Aye.
Hardesty.
Thank you for your willingness to continue to serve the city of Portland. I vote aye.
Maps.
Yeah, Sam, thank you so much for agreeing to serve on this important committee. I vote aye.
Rubio.
Thank you for your willingness to serve our city. We're really grateful that Prosper will be able to draw from your knowledge and expertise and your network of relationships in the public and private sector. Congratulations, I vote aye.
Wheeler.
Sam, thanks a lot. We appreciate it. You're a great addition to the board. Thank you for all your past service as well. I vote aye. The report's approved. Next.
Amend City of Portland Employee Benefits Program to reflect necessary plan design changes as recommended by the Labor Management Benefits Committee and as administratively required by the Bureau of Human Resources for the city's plan offerings beginning July 1st, 2022 through June 30, 2023.
Colleagues, every year the city's Labor Management Benefits Committee reviews the employee benefits programs and provides recommendations for any changes. This ordinance approves the committee's recommendations for fiscal year 22-23 and aligns our program with state and federally mandated changes. Benefits Manager Michelle Taylor is here to walk us through the ordinance. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and Commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we hear you loud and clear, and you look
Perfect.
terrific too. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm joining from the Portland building next door. It's great to see you all in person. My name is Michelle Taylor, Benefit Manager with the Bureau of Human Resources, and I'm here to talk about Ordinance 349, which approves the 22-23 health plan document and recommended plan design changes. When the 21-22 benefit plan information was presented this time last year, we were over a year into the pandemic. Much of our work since has been maintaining core benefit services while pivoting to pandemic response and the ever-changing needs of our workforce. I'd like to share a few highlights from the past year. We implemented a new benefit administrative software system, bringing our technology up to speed with active and retiree populations housed for the first time within the same system and providing additional administrative efficiencies for our team. We changed employee assistance plan vendors for many employee groups, rebranding as City Strong Guidance Resources, since it's not just for employees and is so much more than counseling, although this is an important feature. This change now provides all household members access to EAP benefits, so it's more inclusive and models other city policy changes. In the first 3 months of the calendar year, more than 300 employees have accessed counseling services through this program, and we're on track to have 20 to 25% utilization over a 12-month period of time. Our thanks goes out to advocates within the Bureau's peer support groups, affinity groups, our City Strong and mental health program coordinators, HR business partners, managers and supervisors who continue to share information and encourage folks to seek services early and often. Additionally, we've expanded EAP benefits to many casual and seasonal employees so they can also access much needed mental health benefits. Our folks in public safety, PPA, PPCOA, and PFFA groups still have access to EAP services through Canopy, formerly Cascade, allowing employees to maintain their preferred and specialized public safety mental health provider panel. We've partnered with health plan vendors to enhance and communicate telephonic and virtual options, ensuring plan participants could continue healthcare throughout the pandemic. Telehealth utilization is up over 5,000% for services, including mental health, within the self-funded plan since early 2020. Employees continue to seek the right type of care when it's offered in a more accessible, and convenient way. We worked with vendor partners to expand access to qualified providers who identify as Black, Indigenous, and people of color, especially in the mental health field. Culturally specific provider lists have been created and are available online with updates occurring quarterly. Our deferred compensation program has approximately 70% participation, and we had 120 plus DCTU represented employees take advantage of increasing their deferred comp contributions with a recent bonus payment. Most recently, we're entering into a hybrid style annual enrollment period from May 13th through 31st, with many in-person events returning at various locations throughout the city. As part of this upcoming enrollment, we're excited to offer a guaranteed approval for supplemental life insurance available to employees who fall under $300,000 of coverage and have not been previously declined. They can add $50,000 of extra life insurance up to the $300,000 maximum without approval. Spouses and domestic partners can add an additional $10,000 up to the $30,000 maximum without approval. The pandemic has really shed light on our financial preparedness, so we will continue providing education on life insurance and disability opportunities in hopes employees take advantage of coverage. We appreciate Council's continued support of plan enhancements to meet the needs of our employees and dependents. I want to thank our valued partners within the Labor Management Benefit Committee and the Portland Police Association who have collaborated on plan changes which support the city's core values. I also want to extend a continued appreciation of our vendor partners for their support in providing innovative benefits specific to the city population. In no way would any of this work get done without the dedication of the entire benefit team. These folks work tirelessly to ensure core services continue and work adapts to the changing needs of our employees. Our team has had our own fair share of family status changes, struggles with childcare and elder care, COVID hitting our homes, loss of family members, and everything in between. Meanwhile, this team continues to support the health and well-being of city employees and all of our plan participants. I couldn't be prouder of the team and the work we've accomplished. The ordinance that we're bringing forth today, 349, authorizes changes to the health plan document for the new benefit plan year, beginning July 1 of 2022. While the plan document represents the legal requirements of the health plan and the health reimbursement account, by approving this ordinance, you are also approving plan design changes recommended by the Labor Management Benefit Committee and for all administrative requirements which BHR, Bureau of Human Resources, and the Benefit Office are responsible to fulfill. So I'm going to go through those changes. A few of them are state-based regulatory changes, which include proton beam therapy coverage for prostate cancer under MOTA, virtual visits covered and paid at the same rate as in-office visits, and 2 Kaiser state-based changes, including the first change to naturopathic care coverage, so it's the same as a physician visit, and the second being that alternative care will no longer be covered under the base plan. Federal regulatory changes include the No Surprises Act, which does a few things. It protects members from surprise billing for emergency services, prohibits balance billing for air ambulance services, and requires continuity of care when a provider changes their network status. Additional federal regulatory changes include ACA preventive services, which adds coverage for the Ebola vaccine and also lowers much needed colorectal screening to age 45. The following are changes that are recommended by the Labor Management Benefit Committee, which include changes to MOTA medical plan, adding gender confirming facial surgery as a covered benefit, maintaining coverage for diabetes management from conception through 6 weeks postpartum, and maintaining eligibility for inmates. Delta dental plan changes include enhancements to plans that allow full benefit maximum for non-preventive services. For both MOTA and Kaiser health plans, we propose to make waived cost share for in-network mental health care office visits part of the regular plan design. We also propose reducing cost share for behavioral health medications. Under the Employee Assistance Plan, the recommended change is to continue offering 5 additional EAP visits each plan year per member. And life insurance, the recommended change is to move basic life coverage, which is provided by the city, from 1 times the salary up to a maximum of $50,000 to a flat $50,000 for all employees, ensuring equitable coverage regardless of one's salary. Based on the Labor Management Benefit Committee changes described, the final health premium costs and self-funded rates will increase approximately 1.4% citywide for fiscal year 22-23. The Health Operating Fund budgets include appropriations in support of the health plan costs associated with this ordinance. As in prior years, we draw down health operating fund reserves to lessen cost impacts to bureaus and to employees. This has been an important strategy to balance against high increases. With that, I conclude my remarks. I would ask for your support in authorizing this ordinance, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Colleagues, any questions? Very good. Very thorough report, and I appreciate the additions of some new screenings and new procedures. I think that's fantastic. Keelan, do we have any public testimony on this emergency ordinance?
No one signed up.
Very good. If there's no further comments or questions, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Michelle Taylor. That was a very thorough report. Your stat that telehealthcare is up 5,000% was, I don't know, it made sense, but it was also shocking to ever hear something being up 5,000%. I recall working at Virginia Mason Clinic in Seattle in the early 90s, and we were rolling out telehealth. And to think that we're finally here and what it took is, anyway, that happened. And I think this innovation is now here for the long term and will never go back. But also thank you for leading the upcoming enrollment season, the 13th through the 31st. You better rest up because there'll be a lot of people like me with questions needing you and your team's service, and I'm grateful for that. I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
I want to thank Michelle for this report, and I also want to say these are thoughtful changes. I want to recognize that this work is also very intentional and thoughtfully put together, and we see and appreciate the time and care put into it by the Labor Management Benefits Committee and all those involved. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
So this is about the health of all of us, of our city employees. It's also about our ability to recruit and retain good employees. So the benefits that we provide have to measure up to what others who are competing for our workforce offer, and this does this. I'm very encouraged by the expansion of services while frankly maintaining a low overall cost increase. I want to particularly thank our BHR staff and members of the Labor Management Benefits Committee for their work to amend as well as improve the City of Portland's employee benefits program plan offerings. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Colleagues, we will take a 10-minute recess, and we will be back at why don't we come back at 11:50 a.m. We're in recess until then.
Recording stopped.
session.
Recording in progress.
We're to the regular agenda, please. Item number 360.
Appoint Christian Ariana Bauer to the Police Accountability Commission.
This is a resolution. Commissioner Rubio.
Colleagues, are we on 348?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was supposed to do this.
Yeah.
I apologize. We didn't practice this. I'll turn this over to Mike Myers, the Community Safety Transition Director Division, to introduce this appointment. Welcome, Director Myers, and I believe you are the first person to testify in person since we came back. So congratulations. Thank you for being here.
You're all doing a great job today, so thank you for having us back in the council. It's my pleasure. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. My name, for the record, is Mike Myers. I am the Community Safety Transition Director for the City of Portland. This resolution appoints a community member to serve for the remainder of the 18-month term of the Police Accountability Commission and places a member who has unfortunately resigned, creating a vacancy. Having 20 active members for the remaining time of the Commission's term will help the Commission achieve its goals on time. The
Commission just finished its organizational phase of work and is starting to discuss police accountability and oversight in its next phase of work. With me here today virtually is Samir Kanal, the Program Manager for the Police Accountability Commission. He will highlight the replacement and introduce the appointee. Samir?
Thank you, Director Myers. As Director Myers said, my name is Samir Kanal. I am an analyst with the Community Safety Division, focused on the Police Accountability Commission, joined by Christian Oriana Bauer, who's also on virtually. The Police Accountability Commission is moving into the next phase of work after organizational work is done, which is the fact-finding phase. In that capacity, having a full commission would be very helpful to continue on. There were well over 100 community members who applied for the commission in the original solicitation for applications, and this pool of applicants was used to fill vacancies. Life circumstances change. Sometimes a volunteer resigns. We unfortunately had a resignation for personal reasons a few weeks ago from a member of the PAC. Council staff reviewed candidates who were eligible not only for the commission, but for the particular category. The member who resigned was in the over-police community member category, as is the new appointee. And after a list was sent by staff to council offices, all 5 council offices collaborated to support the appointment of Christian Oriana Bauer, which continues the collaboration of all 5 council offices on this commission and the process of rethinking police accountability in Portland. On behalf of the division, we'd like to thank all 5 council offices, and in particular Mayor Wheeler's staff and Commissioner Rubio's staff for their co-introduction of this resolution. Christian Oriana Bauer is a great fit for the commission because as a parks worker, Christian sees numerous police community interactions. Christian's lived experience as an immigrant with Indigenous heritage will help inform the commission's work. Christian runs workshops with kids experiencing mental health challenges, and as the commission has both youth and mental health communities as priority areas for outreach, that's very important. Christian's also led presentations in Spanish for health educators on COVID health in Spanish-speaking communities, and is fluent in Spanish and intermediate in ASL as well. And Christian is also an artist plugged into local artist communities, including the activist artist intersection, which is a part of the activist community that isn't always well represented in city processes. With that, I'll turn it over to the prospective appointee, Christian Oriana Bauer. Thank you.
Thank you, Samir. Can you all hear me? All right. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, everything Samir just said, it's about me. I'm going to share a little about my intent for joining, and then I'll turn it back to whoever would like to speak next. I'm hoping to be able to contribute my lived experience a little more directly to some of the conversations around the systemic problems within law enforcement, and by extension, the criminal justice system. I recognize that this commission or committee that I'm joining is a little kind of more focused on a specific subsection of that. But I still would hope to contribute in some way, however I can. And again, I recognize that it has a very small subsection to that, but I would like to try and engage in some way, at least with the development of infrastructure needed to start applying these larger conversations, which can be kind of abstract in like academic circles and or just in general conversation as well. But I'd like to try contributing to applying them to a more practical level, which this feels like a good way to try and engage with that, at least in a small way. Yeah, if there's any questions, please feel free to let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate your willingness to serve. Colleagues, any questions? Very good. This is a resolution. Keelan, do we have any public testimony on this item?
We have one person signed up.
3 minutes, please. Name for the record.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Mark Porras. I use he, him pronouns, and I live in Northeast Portland. I'm testifying today as a member of Portland Cop Watch. Portland Cop Watch has a member who sits on the Police Accountability Commission. And as an organization, we have no opposition to the nominee to fill the empty seat. But it is important to say a few things structurally about the Police Accountability Commission. This is a replacement for the second person to resign from the commission in just the first 5 months. On Monday this week, the commission had only 10 members present at the meeting. And because there was an empty seat on the commission and another member has taken a leave of absence, there were only 18 active members at the time. The staff decided to end the meeting for lack of quorum after 15 minutes because there were only 10 members present. If the commission's bylaws were to be supported by council action, the number of members needed for quorum would have been 10 and the meeting could have continued. This problem with quorum being based on the maximum number of members rather than the active number also affects PSEP, which is down to just 7 of its possible 13 members. So while this morning's appointment comes just a few weeks after the Police Accountability Commission lost its member, there's really no telling how often this issue might come up in the future. So Portland Cop Watch urges the council to set quorum for at least these two bodies, PSEP and the Police Accountability Commission, at the number of active members. Thanks.
Mark, could I ask you a question? Because I've put a lot of thought into this as well. There's two ways we could look at this. Number one, we could look at changing the quorum rules so that it's easier to meet quorum with less people. But isn't the right answer here to make sure that we have enough people with diverse backgrounds and perspectives that are willing to serve on the committees? And that seems to be the larger problem that we keep running into, is that it can be hard to find people who are willing not only to serve, but to make the substantial time commitment that is required for these committees. And let's be honest, because of their subject matter area, there is intense public scrutiny that goes along with serving on these committees. And a lot of people just aren't up for that. I totally get that. But shouldn't we really be focusing on recruiting people rather than trying to make the quorum rules easier to meet?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it can't just be either or. Especially in a case when there's 20 commission members and if we're just lacking 2 and you have 10 members there. So I think we need to fill these spots and we need to fill them exactly like what you're saying with the diverse candidates that we need. But to hold, especially with the Police Accountability Commission, which has these timelines, I think it's dangerous to hold up the work, especially if you have still 90% of the commission, you know? So maybe there's some sort of compromise that can be made. But yeah, I agree. That's a good point. But holding up the work of the commission, especially in this last case, that's hard for me to swallow too. So
yeah,
sure.
I appreciate your perspective on that. Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Mike Myers. I did have a question for the gentleman who just spoke. Did he leave? Did we lose him? Oh, is he still there? Okay, I can't see him on my screen. And so I think the challenge always when you have a brand new commission, especially one of 20 people, is people come in with different levels of knowledge. I know that it took a while to actually finally get the bylaws in a place where they are now ready for the co-chairs to actually bring it back to the full body. I anticipate as Kristen joins this incredible group of community volunteers, they will be totally focused on actually engaging the broader community around how the community wants to see a police oversight board develop. And they will be developing those policies that then will come in front of the city council. So Kristen, I just want you to know this is a perfect time for you to be joining this commission. I'm really thrilled to see someone that's an artist as well as someone who has lived experience in this effort. because it will take all the communication styles we have to engage a broad segment of the community in this effort. And I would also push back against like lowering the threshold for when business can be conducted. It's a 20-member committee. I would expect that we would want all 20 members to be at every meeting that the whole commission should be at. But at a minimum, I would think that with half of the folks there, you should be able to at least conduct some preliminary work that then leads into the next meeting. And again, I know that we're just finally getting into the meat of the work that will be accomplished over the next year. And I look forward to what this commission brings back. And Kristen, I will tell you, like I told the other commission members, this is a huge responsibility that we're putting on your shoulder. And we're putting it on your shoulder because we believe you are, in fact, the right community member to be part of this group of 20 to bring the city council the best recommendations on policy possible. And so again, thank you for stepping up. And as the mayor said, it's not easy work, but it's necessary work. And it absolutely has to be work that the entire community respects. And I look forward to seeing what comes next. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty. Any further questions or comments? Colleagues, seeing none, this is a resolution. We've completed public testimony. Keelan, it was just marked very good. Please call the roll.
Ryan.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioner Rubio, for the recommendation of Christian to the Police Accountability Commission. And thank you, Director Meyer, for being here, and to Samir Kanal for providing necessary context. And thank you for the testimony about the quorum challenges. But this is about you, Christian, and I so appreciate learning more about you. And thank you for your interest in being a part of the Police Accountability Commission and your amazing skills, trilingual, arts background. You definitely have the heart and head for this work, and it's very complex work. I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Thank you, Kristen, for stepping up into this role. Thank you so much, Mike Myers. You are a miracle worker. You continue to do amazing things here for the Community Safety Division, and I thank you. I vote aye.
Maps.
I want to thank Christian for agreeing to serve on this important committee, and it's great to see Mike Myers here in person. This is a very momentous day. I vote aye.
Rubio.
Great to see you in person, Mike, as well. And colleagues, I'm happy to co-sponsor this appointment with Mayor Wheeler. I want to thank you, Christian, for your willingness to serve on the commission in this very critical phase of the development. Your added voice and experience will be an important addition to the work that's already happening. I look forward to hearing about the final results when you're done. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
The Police Accountability Commission and its work are obviously very important to implement Measure 26217, which passed here with overwhelming support in 2020. Having a full commission of 20 community members will help the group achieve their goals. The commission will benefit from having a diverse commission that represents all Portlanders, and new appointee Christian Aureliana Bauer complements our current 19 volunteers in his lived experience and communities he will help the commission connect with. Christian, we are very happy that you are willing to step forward and serve, and we wish you the very best. And if there's any further way that we can be helpful to your efforts, you'll let us know. I vote aye. The resolution is adopted. The appointment is approved. Thank you. Next item, Keelan, also off the regular agenda, item number 361, a report.
Accept bid of Interlochen Inc. for the 162nd Access to Transit Powell to Stark project for $2,819,949.
Safety enhancements are needed on Southeast 162nd Avenue between Southeast Stark and Powell to prevent crashes and improve access for pedestrians, bicyclists, those taking transit, and drivers. This project will provide more street crossing opportunities, improved street lighting, a complete sidewalk network, and enhanced bike lanes. Chief Procurement Officer Biko Taylor is here to present the report. Biko, welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor Wheeler, City Council. I'm Biko Taylor, the city's Chief Procurement Officer. City Council approved Ordinance 190304 on February 24th, 2021 for this project. The original engineer's estimate for this project was $3.48 million, and the confidence level was high. Procurement Services issued the invitation to bid on February 22nd, 2022, with a due date of March 15th, 2022. We received 2 bids in total. Interlaken Incorporated was the low bidder and the recommended awardee. Their proposal came in at $2.8 million, which was 19% under the engineer's estimates and the PBOT budget. This project is partially funded by a federal transit administration grant. And because of the grant, the city was required to apply TriMet's Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program goals to this project. TriMet set that DBE goal at 10%. The total DBE goal, the total DBE subcontract percentage on this project was 20%. So TriMet, we exceeded TriMet's DBE goal. The total MBE contract percentage for this contract was 16%, which was awarded to Alcantar and Associates and also CNC Flagging. And the WBE percentage, white female portion of the subcontract plan, was 4.27%. TriMet deemed Interlaken Incorporated to be responsive to the DBE requirement. State-based certifications other than DBE are not reported on federal aid projects. The total DBE participation for this project is 20.06%. Any questions?
Commissioner Hardesty has a question.
Good afternoon, Biko. Director Taylor, it's a pleasure to have you here again. I want to make sure that we understand that because this is federally funded in part by TriMet, that the goals sought were different than it would be if this was a funded project that PBOT alone was funding. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
And the federal government only looks at disadvantaged business enterprises. Is that true?
That's true. On this federal transit administration capital improvement grant, those are the rules.
And so I would love us to be proactive as we start considering what 82nd Avenue is going to look like. I would not be happy if we brought in a 10.3% in these major contracts that will be coming down for transportation. So I look forward to working with you to make sure that we will be proud of what we do when we're investing city and state and other federal dollars into improvements in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hardesty.
Very good. Any further questions on this item? Do we have any testimony on this report, Keelan?
No one signed up.
Very good. And then I'll entertain a motion, Commissioner Hardesty.
So moved, Mayor, that we adopt this report as presented.
Commissioner Hardesty moves the report. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Commissioner Ryan seconds the report. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll, Keelan.
Ryan,
Aye.
Hardesty,
Director Taylor, I really appreciate you. I appreciate you being on top of procurement for the city of Portland, and because of that, I am happy to vote aye.
Maps,
Aye.
Rubio,
Thank you, Director Taylor, for your great work. I'm happy to vote aye.
Wheeler,
Aye. The report is approved. Thank you. Next item. Also on the regular agenda, item number 362, an emergency ordinance.
amend contract with U.S. Bancorp DB City Vehicles to extend term to December 31st, 2025, and increase amount by $4 million.
Colleagues, City Fleet has U.S. Bank Voyager cards that are used predominantly by first responders to fuel city vehicles in the field. Amending this contract will allow the City Fleet the time they need to do a full request for proposal process to issue new cards that will meet long-term needs without disrupting current operations and fueling needs for City Fleet vehicles. Fleet Business Operations Supervisor Alan Bates is here to present the item. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners. This ordinance is really intended to just give us the ability to continue to fuel our first responder vehicles. We have about 684 fueling cards, and these are cards that allow city vehicles to go in and go to a gas station, fill their vehicle up, and respond to emergencies. This includes police and fire, PSR, and many vehicles that are required in our city. This ordinance really is done with the intent to go to a full request for proposal. So there are very few companies that actually offer these cards that have this type of service. We do intend to go to a full RFP. This is not asking for additional funds. This is just simply extending the current agreement that we have. And in essence, we're just asking for an amendment to allow the additional spending to continue. Without it, we will, our first responders won't be able to fuel vehicles in the field.
Commissioner Hardesty.
Thank you so much for that presentation. Ian, tell me about the car that's behind you.
That is a new concept car from Hyundai. It's one of many electric vehicles. And I will say, and thank you for bringing it up, Commissioner Hardesty, this is liquid fuel we're talking about. We are fully intent to decarbonize our fleet, and we have climate emergency goals, as you know. We are actively looking to finish a contract that we started and awarded with a local company here called OpConnect. And that is underway. Negotiations are underway to allow us to build charging stations and allow us to purchase electric vehicles. So yeah, the car behind me is not a car we would have in our city fleet, but is an example of many, many vehicles that are coming to our world.
I appreciate you saying that because I just can't wait till the fall when we have our very first electric fire truck, which will be delivered this year. And that goes to my question of December 2025 seems a long way off for the extension. So can you explain why you need that much time to actually rethink about this particular contract?
Yeah, no, so I don't, that was really, I believe, an element of procurement's guidance for us. We intend to do the RFP as soon as possible. We have to do requirements gathering, and we have to do a lot of research to just do the RFP. It does take time. It could take up to a year to do the RFP. It could take another year for Bureau of Technology Services to approve. So we did want to have plenty of time, but I think that's more of an artifact of procurement, just wanting to have plenty of cushion in that scale, although we do intend to do the RFP as quickly as possible.
Thank you. That's really helpful. So my last question is there something that allows us to just cancel this RFP once we get the new contract in place, or are we stuck with this until December of 2025?
No, I mean, my thought is that as soon as we're able to award a new vendor based on a public procurement, that we do that, and it won't be, I mean, obviously it will be a council matter as well, because it will be a high enough contract value. So it won't take that long. It will be well before then.
Thank you. That's really helpful.
Very good, colleagues. Any other questions on this item? Keelan, do we have any public testimony?
No one signed up.
Very good. If there's no further discussion on this item.
So Mayor, if I could just, is this I'm sorry, is this an emergency item?
Yes, this is an emergency ordinance.
So I'm just wondering if there's a way to say that this will just be in place until we get the latest contract. I'm just worried if we sign a contract that says it goes to December 2025, it will actually go to December 2025.
Alan, can you further explain what the situation is?
Yeah, so the contract that we had in place actually expired. And just due to the fact that fuel is kind of the lifeblood of vehicles, we had to continue basically creating POs to continue to pay for it. This amendment brings us into compliance so that we can, actually submit payments and POs for fuel. It doesn't mean that we are stuck or beholden until that term, and we can get clarity on that from procurement. But my understanding, it just allows us to go. It could allow us to go to that date. We have every intent. I think everybody in the commission is aware that we've had some challenges with procurement. Things are being worked through now, and we're thankful to BICO and to others for getting us through that process. But now, this is one of those items that unfortunately slipped through the cracks, and now we're just trying to make good to allow our first responders to fuel.
What would be the process if you complete this work sooner and you're ready to sign a contract sooner? What is the process? Do you have to come back to the city council?
I believe we do, because it will be an RFP. So as we've had other requests for proposal that have come before council, it would be highlighted that we are going to, here's the contract value, which again will exceed $1 million. And so we will go and be in front of council with this once we're ready to, which, again, we hope to be in the next 6 to 12 months.
Okay, great. Keelan, do we have any testimony? Did I ask you that? I think I did. You do not. Any further questions? Please call the roll.
Ryan.
Thank you, Alan Bates, for the presentation. This is quite timely and necessary. And I also appreciate the action you are taking to decarbonize the fleet. That was a great conversation. I vote aye.
Hardesty.
Thank you so much for answering those questions on the public record, because, I love when we answer these questions on the public record. I vote aye, and I look forward to working with procurement to make sure that that this contract ends as soon as possible. Thank you.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, please, off the regular agenda, item 363, which is a non-emergency ordinance.
Extend contract with Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare, Inc. to June 30th, 2023, and increase the not-to-exceed amount to $3,790,115 for mental health clinician services.
Colleagues, this ordinance will authorize the Portland Police Bureau to amend the contract with Cascadia Behavioral Health Care to provide the behavioral health unit's project respond teams with qualified mental health professionals. This amendment will allow the Police Bureau to maintain consistent levels of service for vulnerable members of the community while it transitions the team's staffing to a more equitable model. Here to present the item are Lieutenant Chris Burley, Emily Rochon, and Nathan Leamy from the Portland Police Bureau. Good morning, or good afternoon as the case may be.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to come before you today. As a member of the Behavioral Health Unit, I think that it's appropriate that we come to talk to you about this request at the beginning of the month of May, which is also Mental Health Awareness Month. As the Commissioners are probably familiar, the Behavioral Health Unit houses the behavioral health response teams, which are a co-responder model that teams up a Portland police officer with a mental health clinician. Since 2010, those mental health clinicians have been contracted employees with Cascadia Behavioral Health Care. The Behavioral Health Unit has gone out since 2010, when it was the Mobile Crisis Unit, and today the Behavioral Health Unit, to link persons in our community that are experiencing mental health crisis or behavioral health crisis because of addiction to services. At times, the community members may be experiencing acute symptoms, and the co-responder model of an officer and clinician allows us to contact these folks and link them with services. In 2020 into 2021, The Portland Fire and Rescue, under the guidance of Commissioner Hardesty, created Portland Street Response, which, as we've all seen in recent studies, has been a great benefit to the community and a great benefit to community members that experience mental illness. As part of Portland Street Response, their mental health clinicians were City of Portland employees. And we at the Behavioral Health Unit recognized early on that there was a disparity between the compensation that the mental health clinicians assigned to the Portland Street Response received in comparison to the clinicians at the Behavioral Health Unit. And in order to balance out this equity difference, we recognize that we should have our mental health clinicians here at the Behavioral Health Unit become City of Portland employees, much like their PSR counterparts. And so through conversations with the Chief's office and the Mayor's office, in the middle of April, we were given permission to begin the work to have our clinicians fit into what would be similar to, if not the same as, the mental health crisis responder 2 position. As you're all aware, this takes some time, and in order for us to be able to create the new class specification or modify the current class specification, to create the job announcement, to hire the new clinicians and to get them trained, we need time. And so we're asking that we extend this current contract with Cascadia Behavioral Healthcare to December 31st of this year. We fully expect that we will be able to get our 5 clinicians hired and trained prior to this December 31st date, but we want to make sure that we are ready for any uncertainty that might come down the road. So we're asking that the commissioners, that you all authorize the extension of the contract till December 31st.
Lieutenant, could I ask a follow-up question here before I get to my colleague's questions? So the actual item would have extended this till June 30th. It's my understanding you would like to shorten the contract period to 6 months. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, I will put a motion on the table. I'd entertain a motion to amend finding 5 of the ordinance to reflect the 6-month period of agreement ending in 2022 as shown in the proposed amendment submitted to the council. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Very good. We'll leave that open until we get through questions and public testimony. Commissioner Mapps, I think you had your hand up first.
I was going to inquire about the date, the dates. So that my question has been resolved.
Very good. Did anybody else? Commissioner Hardesty? Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you, Lieutenant Burley, for your presentation. I just have a question about whether the Behavioral Health Unit has ever had a independent audit.
So we have the Behavioral Health Unit Advisory Committee, and we have an analyst who processes through our numbers. And we also have the DOJ's COCL, who reviews the work that we do.
So the answer is no. We've never had an independent audit of the Behavioral Health Unit. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess I would want to get better specification on what we consider an audit. The DOJ has provided us, has reviewed a considerable amount of the work that we've done, and yeah.
So yeah, I guess I just asked that question because, we've learned a lot since the DOJ came to town around appropriate first responders for people suffering mental health issues. And so while I appreciate shortening this contract, it would be very helpful, just like we had to do with Portland Street Response, to actually have real independent audits that aren't based on what people who are doing the work tell us is taking place. I guess my concern is you're attempting to build a program that we as the council haven't decided whether or not the program works. And if so, do we want to expand it into something different? So I'm just concerned you're ready to hire people, and we don't have any independent data to assess whether or not this is the road we as a council want to continue to go down. So that's where I'm perplexed that just because Portland Street Response pays a certain rate, their job is radically different than whatever it is that happens with the behavioral health unit. So I think we're comparing apples to oranges. So, Mayor, I'm just a little confused about, I understand why we want to do the extension, but I'm very concerned that we're rushing to hire staff when we don't actually know whether or not, as we continue to move forward, as Portland Street Response becomes citywide, as other non-law enforcement responses to people in crises on our street get more solidified, is this really the right direction to be adding additional staff to something that, as far as most people, well, let me just say that we don't know whether it works as intended. So I'm a little perplexed by that. And as far as I know, we haven't voted on actually hiring staff, have we, into the civilian staff into the behavioral health unit, have we?
Lieutenant Burley.
Yeah, so that, no, we have not, the commissioners have not voted on that yet. I believe that it is going to be brought up in the mayor's budget later on. I guess I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Hardesty. I would like to underscore that that the COCL is an independent body that has routinely and does routinely assess the work that we do. And I'd also like to underscore that we have worked with Portland Street Response and received referrals from Portland Street Response for folks that do not fit within their fidelity, folks that are of such acute behavior that Portland Street Response is not able to provide them or link them to services. I am happy to gather and to get your office some of the outcomes that we've had or that we've gathered up here at the BHU that shows the work we've done and open that also up to review by outside agencies, organizations. Again, though, I believe that the COCL has reviewed our numbers and that the city recognizes the COCL as an independent body that has verified the results and outcomes that have come out of this office.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Sorry, getting used to turning this darn thing on and off when I talk. I don't disagree that the COCL has a responsibility to ensure that we are in compliance with the Department of Justice settlement agreement. That is actually not the same thing as what are we building towards as we one day, I hope, will be out of the settlement agreement, and instead we'll be building a community safety team that actually is a community safety team. And I just want to make sure that we're not jumping the proverbial gun by actually institutionalizing things that may or may not be part of community safety in the future. We have a lot of analysis that hasn't come back yet about what it is we're building towards. So it doesn't have anything to do with what you're asking us to vote on today, but your presentation gave me concern that you're out hiring people to do something that we may actually already have that covered with the community health assessment team that is now out of the Portland Fire and Rescue as well. So if we're not having these conversations intentionally, we'll just end up duplicating efforts on the street. That's my concern. Thank you.
Commissioner Ryan.
Yes, thank you for being here, Lieutenant Burley. And I think this is the right conversation that we're having right now. I'm glad you started off with saying May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And we all know it's the most undiagnosed condition because of the stigma that's been there forever. And at a time with also the addiction crisis, with how many people are dying on our streets of overdoses, we know our first responders need to continue to lean into mental health and behavioral health awareness. So it seems as though we need to also continue to build the intelligence and the skill sets around mental health with the first responder system that includes the police. And so I just want to hear more about the dialogue that you're having with Portland Street Response as we integrate. And I think you were leading into that a little bit, but I wanted to give you more time to talk about the integration of services with your partners at Portland Street Response. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we've had the opportunity to provide some training for Portland Street Response as it relates to interface with the times that maybe they do need to call upon our assistance. It also relates to recently we were contacted by Portland Street Response, who had received a community referral about an individual who was participating in threatening behavior based on the community members' belief that the person was experiencing mental illness. And that person was assigned to one of our behavioral health response teams, the officer clinician partnership, after that it was realized that Portland Street Response, it did not fit in the fidelity of their model. We also, I believe it's on a monthly basis, members of the behavioral health response teams meet up with Portland Street Response. And then as part of this, this process that we're undergoing, I've also been in communication with Portland Fire and Rescue regarding the class specification. So those types of conversations are occurring, and I would be happy to also reach out to Mike Myers to be able to make sure that he's aware of, or better aware of the work we're doing. I know that we've been recently in several meetings with him, and I'm quite confident that he's familiar with the services that the behavioral health unit participates in. And I also want to address that we're not looking to add positions to the behavioral health response team. We're working to right an inequity that we see right now by transitioning and going through the BHR process to hire the same number of clinicians that we have right now. Those clinicians would no longer be contracted, though, through Cascadia.
Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
Very good. Any further questions? Do we have public testimony on this non-emergency ordinance?
No one signed up.
Very good. Why don't we call the roll then on the amendment? Any further discussion on the amendment? Please call the roll.
Ryan.
Thank you again, Lieutenant, for being here. That was a great conversation. I'm really proud that we're building a first responder system that's integrating mental health increasingly and putting more investments towards that. It's exactly what's needed, and this is a much longer conversation in general, but on this item at this moment in time, I vote aye.
Hardesty.
We're voting on the amendment. Just the amendment, that's all. Aye.
Maps.
Just the amendment.
I am the amendment.
Rubio.
Thank you, Lieutenant Burley, for the presentation. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I vote aye. The amendment is adopted. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading as amended. Thank you. Next item, 364, please.
Assess benefited properties for street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements north of Southwest Lauderdale Street in the Southwest 47th Avenue Phase 1 Local Improvement District.
Commissioner Hardesty.
I believe, Mayor, this is a second reading.
Oh, you're right. Correct. This is a second reading. We've already heard a presentation. We've had an opportunity for public testimony. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll, Keelan.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item is item number 365. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
She has to read it first.
Sorry.
Amend water code to comply with requirements per state statutes, correct a previous inadvertent omission, and clarify language.
Commissioner Maps.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Colleagues, this ordinance makes changes to the rules and regulations that guide the operation of the city's water bureau. This ordinance does two things. First, it brings the water code into compliance with new state laws. And second, this ordinance fixes a Scrivener's error in code regarding cost sharing and backflow prevention devices. Here to tell us more about this ordinance, we should have Jody Inman, the Chief Engineer for the Water Bureau. Jody, are you there?
Thank you.
There you are.
I'm here. Thank you, Commissioner Maps. Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Could you start the presentation, please? Thank you very much. So as Commissioner Maps mentioned, next slide. We are here today for 3 amendments. We're in 3 areas to Title 21, which is the water code that governs the Water Bureau. And that is to comply with new state law regarding middle housing, correct a previous inadvertent omission, and clarify backflow prevention language. Next slide. The primary driver really for us being before you today has to do with complying with the new state law, Senate Bill 458, which was passed in 2021 regarding middle housing. This state law requires jurisdictions allow creation of landlocked parcels for private home ownership. This is intended to increase expanded access to home ownership, especially for first-time home buyers. Current Title 21 actually prohibits service to landlocked parcels, which many of these middle housing parcels would be. That is, parcels that do not actually have a lot line that fronts on a public right-of-way. The amendment to the code would allow the Water Bureau to provide service to those landlocked parcels via private easements. Next slide. The second Scrivener's amendments that we're making have to do with backflow prevention. Backflow prevention devices prevent contamination to the public water system. They are required by the Oregon Administrative Rule. The amendments do multiple things. They clarify the definition of what a backflow prevention device is, when it is required, where devices should be placed, and they also provide a link to the backflow assembly installation requirements document that's on the Water Bureau website. Next slide. In case you're interested in what does a backflow prevention device mean and why do we have it? When water enters your home from the main water supply line, it should only flow in one direction, and that is into your home. Sometimes, due to pressure changes in our pipes, that water can actually flow backwards or seep into the public water supply. This can happen when there are reductions in pressure in the main water system, such as when one or multiple fire hydrants are opened, or if you have a main break that creates a high demand and reduces that pressure. When the pressure is reduced to a low enough point, it is no longer pushing water into your home, and it can actually start to draw water from those private premises. When that happens, backflow can contaminate the public drinking water supply with things like fertilizers and pesticides, which can happen from lawn irrigation systems, human waste, which can happen from medical facilities, chlorine from pools and spas, and other contaminants that the water could be exposed to on the private premise plumbing. Next slide. The third amendment, or the third area of amendment, is to, as Commissioner Maps mentioned, to correct an unintended omission that occurred during the Title 21 rewrite, which was approved in December of 2020. Title 21 allows limited cost sharing opportunities on certain main extensions, and those are main extensions where there is a demonstrated public benefit in addition to the private driver for the main extension. Cost sharing on subdivisions. Subdivisions are mains that are typically associated with a development and an land use application, has never been allowed, and it was unintendedly omitted when we did the 2020 rewrite. So this amendment would simply reinsert that prohibition for cost sharing on subdivisions into the code. Next slide. And that's the extent of our request. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Very good, colleagues. Any questions? Very good. Thank you for the presentation. Keelan, do we have any public testimony on this item?
One person signed up.
Let's hear them. 3 minutes. Name for the record, please.
We have Bruce Barnes.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Bruce Barnes. I've been a lifetime resident of Southwest Washington and been a user of our water systems in the Northwest, the Columbia River, Willamette River, and I'm here to talk about clean drinking water. I believe that you guys are in a dereliction of duty and criminally negligent for allowing what has gone on here. And by me forewarning you of this problem and you not doing anything to it, you can be civilly liable for what's going on. And what I'm talking about is all the homeless, garbage, feces, radiator fluid, oil, everything that's going down our stormwater drain systems. You're in violation of the Clean Water Act, basically the Monotoxin Control Act, which is in the state of Washington, but you have something similar to that. You are in violation of the Endangered Species Act for salmon and steelhead. Our river systems are a disaster, riddled with homeless boaters, garbage, human waste, needles, and all of this stuff is jeopardizing the clean drinking water of citizens of Portland, Oregon. If you go out Airport Way, next to your water systems out there, all the homeless have inhabited all the wetlands, which is the filter system for the clean drinking water of the citizens of this city. It needs to be fixed. I'm giving you guys 2 weeks to start on it. And if you don't, I'm going to come back here with a tort letter and I'm going to sue you. And I'm also going to sue your bond as a politician. I'm over it. We cannot ruin this beautiful area by the politicians in the community not doing their job. I'm hoping that you're going to take this as a very firm action by me because I am done playing. I've already been to the city of Vancouver and Clark County and said the same thing. They're actually acting on it because they realize the seriousness of this. So I'm asking you please today in a firm way to take your job seriously, to take the citizens seriously. But the more disturbing thing that I found by coming down here today was reading what your public policy is on public meetings. And what your public meeting law, the last paragraph says, public meeting law is a public attendance law, not a public participation law. The right to the public to attend does not include the participation by giving testimony or comment. How is that possible when the public elects you to represent them and you're the health and safety boundaries and the people that are in charge of safety in your community? Now, when I look around Portland, Oregon, I see 340 some shootings this year. All the wrecked cars that are out there on Airport Way. It's a disaster. We got to do better as a humanity and as people and as leaders, right? If I ran my business like this, I'd be bankrupt. You know what I mean? So we got to do better. And that's why I came here today to talk to all of you so I could see you face to face. And I'm glad that we're finally in person so we can see people face to face again. And I'm dead serious, man. I use those waterways and I respect those waterways and I want to be able to use those waterways. And with summer coming, I don't want any of you taking your grandchildren down to the beach and having them stub their foot on a heroin needle. It's ridiculous. We got to do better.
I'm sorry. Thank you for coming in today.
I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, sit tight for just a sec. Or not. We obviously are, there's no question that the homeless crisis is the most, well, he walked out. He didn't really want to hear what we had to say. All right, fine. Any rate, we do, folks, allow plenty of opportunities for people to testify, whether you agree with us or whether you disagree with us. So that is a non-emergency ordinance. Sorry, I lost my place here and I have to find it. Where were we? 365. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. We move it to second reading. Last but not least, item 366.
Amend Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund Heat Response Equipment Purchasing Partner Grant with Earth Advantage, Inc. to increase the services of community distribution partners in the amount of $6,325,000.
Colleagues, this is a second reading of a non-emergency ordinance. We've already heard a presentation. We've taken public testimony. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Ryan.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubio, for bringing this forward. It's a very important ordinance to address climate concerns for vulnerable Portlanders. I really appreciate the presentation from the Bureau staff, and I want to specifically thank Director Olivera, PSF Manager Sam Rosso, and the Development Policy Manager, James Valdez, for answering some of the tough questions from myself and other members on council about this project. As you know, it's an important topic and we must act with urgency. Our role on City Council is to ask you all these questions to make sure that our implementation will be successful as possible. I really appreciate that you listened last week with openness, and because of that, I know you are all will implement this work with urgency, humility, and with purpose. I mentioned last week that nonprofit partners have other ways of working that don't always fall in alignment with the city's funding or resources, so I look forward to reviewing the results of this project and finding ways that we can work in greater partnership and collaboration with our nonprofit partners who are often more integrated into the understanding of community needs. With all that, I vote aye.
Hardesty.
I want to start by thanking Commissioner Rubio for her strong leadership around the Portland Clean Energy Fund. I want to thank Sam Barrasso for his incredible work getting us to the place that we are today. And I want to appreciate the community partners that will help make sure that people don't die this summer because they lack access to cooling units that will help keep them safe. This is a process that we're in, and I look forward to continuing to make progress on eliminating inequitable climate inequitable outcomes as we address climate change in the city of Portland. Happy to vote aye.
Maps.
I want to thank Commissioner Rubio for bringing this item forward. I also want to thank Sam and other staff who've worked so hard to really get this program right. I look forward to reviewing quarterly reports on the implementation of this innovative program. For these reasons, I vote aye.
Rubio.
I want to thank PSF Committee and the staff again for their work in designing an innovative community response to extreme heat events that ended so many lives last summer and continue to endanger our community as the impacts from climate change continue to worsen. You all worked at a lightning pace to bring this program to life on top of your regular work, so I want to appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge and thank Earth Advantage for the critical role that they're playing in securing efficient cooling equipment and coordinating efforts to make us more climate resilient. And finally, congratulations and thanks to our initial cohort of community distribution partners. It's through relationships like these that we develop trust so that we can make bigger, deeper climate actions moving forward. I vote aye.
Wheeler. Authorize city attorney to appeal judgment in ACLU of Oregon et al. Versus City of Portland, Multnomah County, circuit case number 20CV27116. Dan Handelman. Dan Handelman. That's correct.
Dan, 3 minutes, name for the record, please.
Dan, you're on mute.
Dan, can you unmute, please?
Yeah, sorry, I'm double connected through a phone and a computer. I couldn't hear the mayor's introduction at all. Then there was no closed captioning provided for it, so I'm not sure what was said in the introduction.
It was a brilliant and pithy introduction. All I asked was who had pulled it, and the council clerk indicated you had, so I suggested that we let you speak first. 3 minutes, name for the record, please.
Appreciate it. All right, well, this is Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns of the group Portland Cop Watch. Mayor Wheeler and members of City Council, many times when Portland Cop Watch comes before you to testify on agenda items, we're conveying analysis, hoping to bring up educational points to ensure you can make good policy decisions. Today's item, empowering the city attorney to appeal the finding that the Portland police violated the state statute against spying, is prompting us to be more direct. Please do not do this. The resolution talks about how the judge's ruling has left, quote, ambiguities, an argument similar to what the city just used to get the state to reverse most of the limitations on harmful crowd control weapons. The state law is very clear. Law enforcement cannot collect or maintain information on people's social, political, or religious affiliations without reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. Engaging in a First Amendment protest is not criminal activity. The resolution also says how the city's failure to understand this simple concept means it will impact, quote, implementation of police body cameras and policies implicating the use of live video for situational awareness by the Portland Police Bureau's Incident Command Center. For the purposes of not assuming the worst, we will assume this is not suggesting the command center will be receiving live video from body cameras. If so, without reasonable suspicion of criminal conduct, this would be an expansion of the stated reason for the Bureau to obtain body cameras, which is for accountability purposes. Regardless, DOJ's model guidelines on body cameras explicitly invokes ORS 181A.250 and asking the city what to consider when setting policies for the body cams. What's important to remember is that body cameras both collect and maintain information. Despite what the city attorney has argued for years, the statute does not distinguish the intent of law enforcement. In other words, saying that you captured these affiliations as a byproduct of something else doesn't make it okay. This is also true for live streams sent to the command center, except that the PPB is claiming that they are not recording these images. That is irrelevant, since the people watching the video can pick out individuals they know and target them for harassment, detention, or arrest, based on those officers' prejudices instead of the presence of any suspected criminal activity. The auditor's office just came out with a report last month showing the PPB does not have enough policies in place to prevent violating people's rights in collecting and maintaining information in violation of the statute. Rather than continuing to argue this point in court, the city should design policies to conform to the law. And also, please do not try to amend the law to fit your needs. It was put in place to prevent the overstepping of government spying. You may think that the PPB is not the same as the FBI or other federal agencies in how it engages in surveillance of people of color, immigrants, Muslims, activists, and other marginalized communities, but pushing back when you lost in court indicates that you want to be able to have behaved in the same way. So please drop this appeal. And just as a quick note about the new format, it's very frustrating. I did not know that the item about the behavioral health unit had anything to do with police because of how it was listed on the agenda, and I tried to sign up before you started voting on it, and I wasn't able to testify on that. So think about that for the future in these hybrid meetings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Handelman. Could I ask a question of legal counsel? It's my understanding, so we are the defendant in this case, correct? And the ACLU of Oregon is bringing the case against the city of Portland, is that correct?
So Mayor, I'm going to refer you, online is Ryan Bailey, who is the person handling the case. So
I'm sorry.
Ryan
Who is handling it?
Ryan, are you there?
I am. Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor, Commissioners, how can I help?
Yeah, Ryan, just a couple of questions here germane to Mr. Handelman's testimony. So we are the defendants in a case being brought by the ACLU of Oregon, is that correct?
That's correct.
And what is the ACLU of Oregon's perspective with regard to this appeal?
So, I suspect, well, that's a complicated question, Your Honor. I'm not sure if I would like to, testify on their behalf as to what their perspective is.
All right, let me ask the question a different way. Isn't the purpose of this appeal to clarify a previous ruling?
Correct. And so that is actually an issue, Mayor, that I think the ACLU's counsel is, based on the conversations that I've had with them, will understand, and they actually may, in fact, have a desire to cross appeal as well. The issue, I think a lot of people are familiar with the appeal process as something you do when you want a different outcome. In this case, it's somewhat more nuanced than that. Really, what we want is to have clarification on what the law truly means. And if it, in fact, means what the court suggested at the circuit court level, that's fine. But knowing that and hearing that from a court with precedential authority at the appellate level will allow us to proceed with policy advice going forward that will be more confident, and we believe that will help the city attorney's office provide more competent advice to city council as it seeks to make some of these changes with respect to law enforcement and government transparency that has made an important initiative for the city.
Yeah, and I just want to underscore this point. An appeal does not always mean you're mad as hell and you want to change things. In this case, as I understand it, It's seeking clarification from the courts on what their ruling actually is so that we may abide by it. Is that a fair characterization?
That is a fair characterization, and it's absolutely accurate.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions. Any other questions? Very good, and this is a resolution. Is there any further testimony, Keelan?
We have one other person
All
signed
right,
up.
let's hear them.
Mark Porras.
Yep, good afternoon again. For the record, my name is Mark Porras. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm testifying as a member of Portland Cop Watch. I failed to mention earlier that I'm grateful for this hybrid system. As someone who works from home, this is the only way that I can participate, so thanks. And I appreciate Mr. Bailey's words, but it doesn't actually change anything that I planned on saying. So I'm here today to learn more about the city attorney asking to appeal this judgment in the live streaming case. It appears that in addition to the existing cameras that PPB was using in 2020 to live stream video, the city now wants the option of being able to live stream from PPB's body cameras for situational awareness. The state law is clear about live streaming community members. The government just can't do it without reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. I hope that this apparent desire to poke at the edges of the state law is not being driven by the behind the closed doors negotiations with PPA. Questions of protecting community member rights just should not be subject to collective bargaining. We know what's going to happen if you purchase cameras with live streaming capabilities. Eventually, the police will turn them on and gather information on community members who are peacefully protesting. Community members who are not under any suspicion of criminal activity. You should save taxpayer money by denying this request. By doing so, you'll free up the city attorney's office to work on issues that might actually have a positive effect on the community. You can and you should simply tell the police bureau that we're not going to buy you cameras that have live streaming capabilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Does that complete public testimony?
It does.
Colleagues, any further questions on this item? Please call the roll on the resolution.
Ryan.
Aye.
Hardesty.
Aye.
Maps.
Aye.
Rubio.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The resolution is adopted, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.